we were frozen?
Sounds good.
All right. Good evening, Holliston. Sorry about the slight delay starting, but it was for good reason, and we are going to start the meeting off with a vote to ratify the memorandum of agreement between the Holliston School Committee and the HFT Paraprofessional Unit. So just to give everyone at home a little bit of an idea of what's in the contract, we have agreed to a 5% annual COLA over the next 3 years. It includes some movement around of eliminating the bottom 3 steps, adding some steps with additional percent increases to the top steps. We've agreed to an additional hourly rate increase to the per hour rate for certain certifications as being a registered behavioral technician and RBT certification. There's an increase in substitution, daily rates, longevity bonuses are being increased after 10 years, and then we're codifying the $500 referral bonus, increasing tuition reimbursement, and increasing flexibility in the hiring of qualified individuals as paraprofessionals. So I think that it's great that we've been able to come to an agreement. If there's any questions about this in open session, we can talk about it, or else we can move right to a vote.
Working with us and collaborating, and we felt like we had really productive and meaningful sessions, and they were really good to work with. And we of course appreciate all of our paraprofessionals. Yes. We just want to send a special thank you to the negotiating team.
Yep. And thank you guys to Sarah, Cynthia, and Lisa for your hard work negotiating that agreement, because we really do appreciate all the hard work you guys put in, but especially what our paras do on a day in and day out basis. So
it's hard work.
It is.
Paraprofessionals do really hard work, and we appreciate them and value them.
Yeah, and I think that this contract really represents that we are, competitive and with our surrounding communities, and the direction that we need to go in terms of what vital role they play in the district. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And so, with that, I'll entertain a motion to ratify the memorandum of agreement with the HFT Paraprofessional Unit for the period September 1, 2024 through August 31st, 2027.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Cynthia.
This doesn't need to be a roll call or anything. So, roll call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll do a roll call just to make it all legit. So, Sarah?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And Dan, I'm a yes as well. So that carries 6-0 with me absent. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all. Moving right along, we are now on schedule. Our consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Cynthia.
All in favor? Aye. That carries 6-0. Thank you. We're now ahead of schedule. Now. Report from our student representatives. Hi, guys.
We have a lot. March is a very busy month, especially at Holliston High School. So we're going to start with sports, because winter sports are kind of nearing an end, and there's a lot of success, which is amazing. Track did amazing, both boys and girls. Boys got third in indoor track, and the girls, a lot of them are moving on to the New England tournament, which is really exciting. And I believe they won. They won, yeah, which is really phenomenal. Yeah. For gymnastics, the co-op team with Medway, Millis, Milford, and Holliston, they got second place at sectionals and are moving on to states on Saturday, which is top 8 teams in Massachusetts. Let's see. The senior showcase is next Wednesday with lots of awesome senior talent, which is always exciting to see all the special things that they'll present. On Friday is semi-formal for freshmen and sophomores, and the senior dance is next Friday, the 15th. So that's a special dance just for the senior class.
There will be a band and chorus concert on March 19th. March is also a really busy time for our clubs. So DECA, HOSA, Academic Decathlon, and Science Olympiad all have state competitions this month.
Yeah. Tonight, actually, currently, the drama program, Theater 370, is doing a preview performance of they wrote a show called Revolutions, and that will be presented at the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild annual drama festival on Saturday, which is really exciting. And then March 12th, there is, I believe it's the first hopefully annual unified basketball versus varsity basketball game coming up.
Yep. And then in March, we have the 8th graders coming up to the high school to visit, and we have MCAS for 10th graders. And lastly, we will be having Mrs. Applefield, who's a Holocaust survivor, and maybe one other to come down to the high school to give a talk.
Yeah, I went last year, super, super powerful and really important.
Thank you.
Great. And I would just note that when we were voting on the contract, Travis was on, and so he essentially abstained, so we'll just make the record reflect that. He texted me, and I forgot that, so that's on me. So school committee individual comment.
So the Rams is having a readathon that'll be starting, I believe, next week. And then the only other thing I have is the PTO will be running their basket raffle. That tickets will be on sale starting tomorrow online. It'll be kind of a new and expanded basket raffle in conjunction with the 300th celebration for Holliston. So, buy your tickets.
Nothing for me. Nothing for me tonight, thanks.
Nothing for me.
Just very quickly, high school spring sports registration's open. It's open until March 8th. And I think you mentioned the play tonight, which was written by one of our high school seniors, Danny Bernard, Revolutions, and then we have the performances this Saturday too, right at Norwood High School.
Yep.
Great. And nothing for me. Do we have any public comment right now? I know you wanted to wait, so we'll do that later. Anyone else? Okay. So now we get on to the finalizing or the paraprofessional contract, the joint statement.
Are you ready to do that now, or do we want to wait till, is it going to be like our newsletter, do you think, or no? Or do we have a different newsletter?
It would just be a separate
Okay.
thing that I would send out.
Well, I just figured it was under communication, but it's okay.
We can move it to later if you'd like to.
Well, I just figured
to get
that way we could get the presentations
fine.
going, that's all
Yep.
I was thinking.
Yep. So we'll move that one down in the agenda and move up. How do you want to handle the order?
I would suggest that since Mr. Bernay has some visitors here to speak, that we could put equity steering first and then technology followed by budget.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. Would you mind pulling up this presentation?
I might, but I'll do it.
We should always do that first.
Sean, would you mind joining us?
Yes.
Such a teacher.
Yes, you should.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put that slide show.
Yeah.
Is that equitable though?
Alrighty.
For docs.
We're all going to
So, before I begin, I first want to thank you guys for having me. I'm excited. I've really loved doing this. I've really loved just getting in a room with some passionate people and talking about this super meaningful work in a real, honest way. It's not easy, and I think we're going to get a chance to talk about that work today, but I also think everyone here has aspirations of where we can get to as a district. So with that, before I begin my report, I'll just introduce myself, and I'll just ask those here to introduce themselves as well. and they'll have a chance where they'll kind of share their experiences. So Jerry Overnay, Director of SEL and Equity.
I am Rachel Griffith, senior at Holliston High School.
Aditya, also the senior year. Sean Mullen, Associate Dean of Faculty for the Natural Sciences at Boston University, and a father of 3 children in the district.
Awesome. So I just wanted to share with you today what I'm going to be talking about a little bit around, next slide, is I'm going to share a little bit of what we've done our last 2 sessions, right? So we're going to be entering, actually, next Monday, session 3. So I want to share what we've done. I want to paint a picture for where we're going and how we're trying to get there. There's no clear path of exactly how we get there, but how we get there together. And then I wanted to kind of share with you the experience of a student and a parent from their perspective on what it's been like so far. My hope is that every time I come and share an update, I'll be able to bring another voice. Because I think this work isn't about what I can bring, it's about what I can facilitate in the room to get us to a real meaningful place. So next slide. So what are we doing, right? So one of the first things we started was around norming, right? When you're bringing people from multiple different experiential backgrounds, we have educators, we have administrators, we have parents, we have students, all coming together. Everyone has different experiences, everyone has different levels of interaction with the school system, and then we have to think about how do we take apart and look at the suggestions that came out of an equity audit, and then engage in conversation together to then get to a place of making recommendations. So one of the first things we had to do was norm our language, come up with group agreements around how do we engage in discourse, how do we engage in conversation, and then make sure that we all had the same objective, right, which is to be able to provide a district with meaningful recommendations on where should we begin, not just in the short term, but what's the work we want to see happen long term that is not just in practice, but structural. We also had to spend time getting to know each other. We had to spend time centering our passions, right? Why are we in the room? We also one of the things that that is extremely important is from session to session is getting feedback. Every session there's something that we learn about the way we learn together, about the way that's best to receive material, how do you take apart a 50-page paper, etc. And then making sure that I'm constantly sharing that feedback that they're receiving from me to them and how we're making decisions to from session to session. Next slide. Hit it a couple of times because I didn't realize it. Yeah, okay, that's good. So what did we do? One of the things you'll see if you ever come to some of our professional developments is music. Music to me is one of those things that just changes the room, but also is a metaphor for a lot of the things that we do. So our first session, we use this metaphor of music to say we all come with a different sound, but how do we bring it together into something that makes sense, that feels great, that sounds great? That's what this work's about. So that was session 1. Can you go to the next slide? Session 2 was jump into the work, right? So, and that came after feedback. I got feedback from people after the first session and said, can we just jump into the work? And I said, let's do it. So session 2, we jumped into the work, and we first kind of went through and said, how is this audit created? In the sense of how the structural created, and then what's going to be the work of how we go through that. Next slide. So I just want to kind of take some time just to kind of highlight this. The report has 3 domains. So it provides recommendations for us as a district in those 3 domains: innovative programming, school and district structures, and student trajectories and outcomes. But within each domain, it gives a recommendation for elementary, and it gives a recommendation for district, and a recommendation for secondary, right? So not only are there 3 domains, there's 3 areas within each domain of how to look at that piece. So what we decided to do, hit the next button, is that we looked at each domain, and what we're going to do is center each time we meet on one of those through lines. So the session we had in February, we looked at all the district recommendations. When we jump into this next session on Monday, we're jumping into elementary, and then we're going to jump into the secondary, middle, and high school. Once we've had a chance to go through and look at through lines across the whole piece, we're then going to come back together, and that's when we start to really create the recommendation piece. Because it's extremely challenging to look at when you do the math, there's probably over 50 to 60 different kinds of recommendations within that audit. Hit next button. So, and that's exactly what I just shared. So our Monday, we're going to be jumping into looking at the elementary recommendations at all 3 domains. Secondary will be at the next session, and then future sessions will be kind of bringing all that work together. So that's an update as far as what we've done, where we're at, right? 2 sessions. I think that we've done a lot of work in those sessions, but I wanted to kind of bring those who are actually in those sessions to share a little bit about what they've experienced, right? I consider myself, and I say I'm the DJ, right? So I play the tunes, I set the vibe, but they're the ones in the room doing the work. So with that, why don't I get a chance to kind of just, these are some questions that I thought was extremely important just to hear from them, because it really centers our recommendations that will come in the future. So why don't we just start with the first one? I know we introduced ourselves, but if you can just, once again, say your name and just kind of what brought you to joining this committee.
Yeah. Again, my name is Rachel Griffith, and I am a senior. And I think I've always had a passion for helping others and wanting to kind of do things for the greater good. And I think especially now, being a senior and at the end of my K-12 education and kind of preparing to move on, I have been thinking a lot about what I can do and how I can leave a positive impact on a place that has really given me so many opportunities to kind of learn, grow, and just become a good person. And I think when I initially heard about this steering committee, I was like, this seems like an incredible opportunity, not just because I want to do it for myself, but because I can hopefully have a really positive impact on the district and help to make it a better, more equitable, inclusive place for all the people that will come after me. And I think that is really kind of my why for being on this committee. And I think kind of so far, throughout high school, I have just learned and seen kind of firsthand the value in listening and acknowledging also the many privileges I have, because I do come from a very privileged place. And I think being on this committee has reinforced this and kind of given me an opportunity to learn from other people who have different experiences, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. That it's so powerful to hear different stories, because that just helps me to grow and helps me to be a more well-rounded kind of global citizen. And I think what I've seen so far is that the report has had so many people involved and has so many different levels to it. But obviously, when you're talking about equity, there's so many viewpoints. It's kind of, you can't say this is equity or this is equity. It is always kind of growing and evolving. And so I think it's really important that we kind of view this like, yes, we're going to give recommendations, but this is a living thing, and we're going to continuously have to keep on changing and keep on looking at these issues, because a lot of them are kind of systemic. And so I think just knowing that we have this committee is really hopeful, because I know that Holliston is going to continue to do that and going to continue to work hard to make the district as inclusive and as equitable as possible. And I think also specifically the last session, early February, really made me think about how diversity encompasses so many different things, and making sure and equity as well. It's because there's diversity is not just physical, it's not just race, it's religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, neurodiversity, etc. Kind of the list goes on. And so I think being able to have all these different voices at the table in terms of the steering committee is so important. And I'm really excited to see where we go with this right now and just how the district continues to make positive changes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Aditya, I know you weren't originally thinking about joining us, so I know this was like last minute. You're like, I'm sitting in. Did you want to take a stab at sharing some of your experiences?
I can just give like a brief glimpse into like what I've experienced and what my thoughts are. So, hi again. My name's Aditya. I'm a senior at Holliston High. The reason I joined this committee was, at least as a student leader, I've heard and I've like seen so many incidences of things like microaggressions, and basically, although we can never truly be perfect, there are some like issues at our school that I think we really need to confront head on. And so far in this committee, I think it's been really, really insightful. There's people from with very different perspectives, and thus there's so many things we can discuss with like the different aspects of equity, diversity, and these issues that are going on at our school. I think, as Rachel said, since there's so many parts to the report, and the report has it has so many different parts, and some parts require us to take some time to talk about these concepts and to sort of discuss and learn about new things, and then apply those concepts to our understanding of what's going on in the school. So I think we're making progress. It's been really insightful to hear the perspectives of other people, and also something great that we did, which I thought was super interesting, was how we all talked about our own biases and like how that affects our viewpoints on things like equity. And yeah, overall, I'm just super excited to see what we do going forth, and I think we're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you. And from a parent, Sean.
Oh, my list of questions is gone.
Oh, there.
It's totally fine.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Today asked me to take.
They're right here.
Right.
No, no worries.
Wow. Firestone, right there.
With the budget coming up in a moment.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So again, my name is Sean Mullen. My why is complicated. I have a deep commitment to fostering efforts to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in both my professional and my personal life. So in my professional role as an associate dean and a professor, where I get to interact with students, staff, and faculty in an academic setting, I spend a lot of time thinking hard about how we can bring more diverse voices into our discussions about policies and practices and experiences. I have witnessed firsthand what happens when environments are not equitable or inclusive. So when that happens to adults, you get disengagement and quiet quitting. When it happens to young people, you get attentional issues, depression, anxiety, and in worst case scenarios, you get suicidal ideation. Right? So it can be traumatic on lots of different levels, and it's just not something that we want to perpetuate. And so, I've had a lifelong commitment to that. Also, in my professional life, I'm on the diversity committee for my scientific society, which is important because I'm an ecologist and evolutionary biologist, and you might be surprised to know that it's almost all white. Big shock. So we're doing a lot of professional efforts there to sort of bring more diverse voices into those conversations as well, because a lot of the parts of the earth that are changing the most rapidly, don't reflect the representation of the people who have expertise in those. In my personal life, we moved to Holliston in 2016 because that year the school committee's focus on professional development was social and emotional wellness. And my oldest child, who graduated last year, who's now a freshman at Stonehill, has a lot of anxiety, had a lot of ADHD, and we thought it would be a good district for her, and it was. It was wonderful. She had a great experience. I'm also the father of a transgender child, and so it's important to both my wife and I that our child is treated with respect and has the opportunity to learn and be supported as his full self. and to never be judged for that. My experience so far has been fantastic. As you've already heard, these young people are there at the committee, which is incredibly just admirable from so many perspectives. I think it's so impressive that you're taking time to come and make your voices heard in these sort of roles at your age. That's just, I'm constantly blown away by it. And then Jerry L's done a great job of bringing diverse voices into that room. So he mentioned the students, the parents, the staff, the school committee members, the administrators. It's wonderful to see all of the different voices that come together from different perspectives that care deeply about this issue. So that's been fantastic. In terms of the complexities and the work is lifelong, right? You don't make changes related to diversity, equity, and inclusion without a commitment to ongoing effort. It's not something that you can just change the policies, school committee policies, for instance, and say like, oh, we have an equity policy, and then walk away from it. It's something that has to be a living document, as you said, Rachel, that you have to be committed to long term, and it's work. It's real work. People come to the work from different points along their journey, and we need to recognize that and support them and meet them where they are. The challenges beyond that are the number of recommendations in the equity audit. There are a lot of recommendations, and so how do you break that down to something that's digestible for everyone who have many of us have very different levels of experience or exposure to it. And so that's sort of what we've started to do, right? So we focus at that high level, district-wide recommendations and try to sort of find the common threads across the entire district. And then, as Jerry said, we're going to break it down from there. So that's why. That's one of the things. That's it.
So that was an update. We wanted to kind of update you where we're at, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then get a chance for you guys to hear directly from those who are kind of engaged in the work with me. I guess I would open it if you have any questions, and if not, then we'll continue, keep moving.
Great, thank you all again. Do we have questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have a timeline in terms of when you think that you would come back with, you've got 50 recommendations, I guess, or so that you're looking at, but are those going to be broken down into, I don't know if we're going to be able to do all 50 of them, but,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what we had set as the possible, when we first set out this work, I had shared that we provided an update February, April, with the hope of by May, June, providing the recommendations, especially as we turn the corner. A lot of professional development is planned over the summer, especially for the upcoming year. So the goal is to have that. But in all honesty, it's probably going to be two levels of recommendations. One is the short term around like what are things that we want to start doing this summer to get ready for the next school year, and what are some long-term recommendations, right? Because I think the other piece that we're kind of really cognizant of is that we don't want to just live in the short term of like, let's start this next year. We really want to have recommendations that say, we believe we should start here, but also these are some structures that we should consider so that this continues to live. I don't think anyone who's been participating would want to say, we're done in June, peace, see you later. I think they're like, we want to make recommendations and we want to continue to kind of connect to figure out how do we continue to help the district move. So I almost see it like in two layers, and not disbanding, I guess, when
Right.
it hits, yeah.
Can I make one statement? I'm disappointed that I don't have the bandwidth to sit on this committee with you because I'm very passionate about this work. I'm so proud that we were able to get the equity audit done with our strategic plan. This is certainly a passion of mine. I don't think people realize how much the demographics are changing in the district. When I was looking up this week, just in 1 year, our white population has decreased by 4%. So currently we are 1.1% African American, 8.8% Asian, 8.5% Hispanic, 0.1% Native American, 75.8 white, 0.1 Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and multi-race is 5.5. And I don't think because the community is not as reflective as the schools, so we don't always realize our schools are becoming more diverse in a wonderful way. And I don't always talk about my personal life too much, but I think it's important to share in the journey with you, Mr. Mullen. I have a biological son who's also non-binary and gay. Very proud of my child. I have another child who also has a transgender girlfriend whom we adore, and I've watched their struggles and their family disappoint them and throw them out of their family, and we have embraced her and loved her like our own. So As I said, I don't usually get personal, but this work is so important. And I worry so much about students if they don't get the things that they need. So I just felt it's important. I don't want to be a bystander. I want to share in the journey and the work with you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay. No, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you, team.
Good luck with the rest of your 2.5-hour meeting.
Oh,
We'll be lucky if
that's-
we have hours.
I used to do this.
Yeah, we know.
I decided I would do this.
Robert, did you want to say something now?
If I may.
Sure. Just, yeah, to the.
So, thank you for allowing me to speak, and I guess, listening to everybody else. So, when we think about the implementation, ultimately the recommendations in the plan, it's a similar reality that we're facing with the strategic plan for the town, FY25, the next 5 years. There's an entire page of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion recommendations. And we know that it's going to require engagement. And you all, teachers, school committee, folks on this particular steering committee, need the community to be engaged. And so that's what I wanted to reference. That so I'm a, my other name, Robert Principe, 203 Turner Road. But I'm also a member of Diverse Holliston, and one of our goals is to build that cross collaboration between community and practitioners in whether it's in the steering committee here, or teachers in the building, or the select board, or the finance committee. That collaboration is something we can build up, because we can't move these changes unless we have that. And so that's my point in sitting here, to say we want to have that conversation, figure out how to do that. It's not going to happen because the report is up on the website. It's not even going to happen because this committee is working, right? So we need to talk about how to build out that engagement. And then the other very, very large piece, it was interesting, while I was waiting for the executive session to be over, I was walking around reviewing some of the awards and recognitions, and then the school committee talked about all the activities that are taking place around the district, right? There's all that good stuff. The work, my understanding, having been in education from 1975 to 2005, the work of addressing gaps in access and equity in educational environments is different, distinctive than what we're already doing. It's always the question, what is it that I don't know? Because if I looked at the report, and I did a quick review before I came, and I see the populations directly affected by the gaps, and we need to give voice to those populations, distinctive from the awards on the wall or the activities that are taking place today. And I'm not dismissing the value of that, right? But students of color, students with are English language learners, students who are economically disadvantaged or on free reduced lunch programs, students with disabilities, students with mental health issues. These are voices that are not heard, not because people are ignoring them, because policy and practice traditionally continues to do what we've done. So it's about change, and that's a big difference to get to fill those gaps, no matter what the recommendations are in that report. And we need all of us to be involved in that. So I want to voice the distinction of the work that we're trying to accomplish. And I want to say, almost demand, that the community engage this. And there are people in this community that want to play the role in bridging that relationship. So please, let's have that. That's a distinctive conversation, right? You all work tirelessly on a regular basis and have these meetings and deal with all these issues. We need each other. I mean, Jariel's leadership around this started with the issue of relationship building. Very intentional. And this issue of people not just sitting and saying, oh, how we doing? We're good. My kid's good. We're all set. Well, maybe there's a bunch of kids that aren't good, and we don't even know about it. So, thank you for listening, and we're ready to engage, not just to put up a report that says, here's the 20 recommendations we're going to move forward on, but what does the reinvention of the relationship, the community mean to see the people dig into the implementation of those recommendations? What does that look like? And that's a whole different other challenge. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you guys again for that presentation and for the work that you're doing, and we look forward to continuing to hear from you. Did you say you wanted technology next?
Yes, please.
Super loud.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on.
You're up.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Can someone pull it up?
Keep getting it.
All right, thank you. All right, tonight I just wanted to share a current major project we're working on and then a future project, so it's going to be pretty brief, just keeping you up to date, basically. Last time I was here, I presented on the AI Steering Committee, so here's the update. If you want to switch to the next slide, it's going to be two topics. New phone system we just launched this past Monday, so I'll talk about that and some of the features it brings us, and then talk about cybersecurity. We're starting to see some grants for K-12, and I'll talk about what we're doing with the town, partnering with the town to address cybersecurity. So, and both of these, obviously, communications Arch 1 and cybersecurity is really under Arch 1 too in the strategic plan. All right, so Zoom phone, hopefully that's a little small up there, so I'll try to read that for you. But basically, the biggest safety feature is the Zoom phone is a cloud-based phone system. So prior to this, we were on a really antiquated, at least a dozen years old phone system with copper lines, and it was, as you can imagine, it was way outdated. So we were actually grandfathered in to two laws called Kerry's Law and Raybaum's Act. And so having a legacy phone system allowed us to be out of compliance, but when you get a new phone system, you have to be in compliance. So essentially what it means is we can dial 911 directly. So Kerry's Law was named after a mother who was killed when her child tried to dial 911 from a motel, and the motel required a 9 in front of the 911, so the call never got out. So that's what we're trying to address. So teachers and students can dial 911 directly. And then the other big piece is we have exact location of classrooms now when it reaches a dispatch. So prior to this, it would just say Holliston High School. Now it's going to say Holliston High School, second floor, room 816, exactly where that event happens. So those are two, again, federal laws that we're now in compliance with. And then the calling features, we got new handsets. They have color screens. Yeah, go figure. We're going from black and white to color. Again, the call numbers, when teachers call you now, it's going to be, they don't need to remember the 9 in front, it's just a direct dial. And then we have multiple ways of calling now for staff. With the laptops, they can call on their laptop, they can call in their handset, and then if they choose to put it on their mobile phone, the Zoom app is very robust on the phone too. And then you can initiate Zoom meetings instantly. And then a big one, a nice feature is voicemail transcriptions. So again, that saves people steps of checking their voicemails. It just comes into your email and it's transcribed already. It's pretty accurate. And then we have nice directories for searching other staff members. Next slide, please. So that's actually, before I get there, so just questions on the Zoom phone. I will say we're in the initial first week, so it's 350 phones, so appreciate everyone's patience, the public's patience. If you see any glitches, we're working through those. So, but do you all have any questions about the system?
That's great.
Okay. All right, so this is a map of, guess what? Cyber incidents. So switching gears pretty quickly. These are K-12 cyber incidents. We are not one of them, fortunately, but it's pretty much in when is it going to happen? So that's what we're going to try to address. So there are districts in Massachusetts that have been attacked, and it's never pleasant. So we're trying not to be one of those dots, but that's the green and the yellows are the phishing and the ransomware. So those are the most prevalent dots on that map. Next slide. So here's what we're doing as far as planning, and actually you can skip to the next slide after that. So as far as best practices, there's really 5 components to cybersecurity planning for K-12s. Multi-factor authentication we've done for staff. Districts like us are still talking about students. It's a tough one because, as you know, with multi-factor, you need a cell phone. So do we start with high school and then middle school? Some kids have cell phones, some don't. So multi-factor is tricky with students, but at least for staff, we've done that. And then I'll switch to the ones that are not bolded, but known exploited vulnerabilities. So we've invested, you've helped us invest in infrastructure and nice antivirus software. So we feel pretty good about that. And then backups. Most of our systems are in the cloud, so we rely on the vendors for their backups. But it doesn't mean we're safe. We have to, if PowerSchool, for example, had some sort of breach, we would be in serious trouble. So we try to make sure to select vendors that are reputable and have a nice security plan in place. But the 2 that are starred are where we're going to shift our focus. So we have a training program. We train 20 to 30 employees every year with phishing attempts, and everybody here has gone through it. But it's not enough. We train the people, the nurses, and the people with high level of data access. But teachers, we need to do a better job. So Chris Mayo and I, the town IT director, are actually partnering. We're submitting a grant. Again, we're starting to see funding coming in. We're going to submit a grant that allows us to perhaps train teachers. And the trainings, the nice thing about the trainings is it benefits people in their personal lives too. So it addresses both work and professional, keeping yourself safe. And then we really need to ramp up an incident response plan. So I talked to the safety committee this past week, and I'd like us to be a part of the safety committee as far as tabletop exercises. So the best practice, again, is the senior leadership, the admin council, perhaps teachers, we need to start practicing cyber attacks and what we do if we're attacked. Do we go back to paper for that week? We just need to start planning these scenarios because, again, I can't make any guarantees. Like it's cyber warfare. So we just need to start planning. So I wanted to keep you in the loop on those plans as they develop. And again, there's some funding that's going to help us with that.
Great. Do we do phishing exercises or anything like that?
They come naturally, actually.
Yeah.
So,
And that becomes the exercise.
it's really, that's what it is. It's education by, and I think people are pretty in tune with it now. It's typically Dr. Kuska's name is mentioned, salary's mentioned, and, click this to see whatever.
Right.
But her name is always in there, it seems like. And it's not just us, it's other districts. And the actors use Google Drive. And so that's how it sneaks through our filters, is they use Google Drive. So
No, I just know at work, we'll get occasional, although it seems like it's almost weekly, emails that we're supposed to click, this is phishing, and then you say, this has been an exercise, and
Yes.
you passed, and
But a number of us went through the formal training
Yeah.
that had to go through hours of it to
Correct.
try to prevent.
So we feel good about this grant, and it's going to be, again, we'll try to train teachers and everyone else constantly, and then the incident response planning will be super helpful. So any questions about that piece? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McCloud.
all right, great. High school.
I think we should do budget next, because Jess was not on the agenda originally,
okay.
so.
Yep, sure, let's do it.
You're okay.
This is the one we've, yeah.
Okay. So tonight, I'm going to present to you our proposed FY25 budget, but it is February 29th, and everything is an estimate at this point. We have some definite concerns, which I'll walk through, and Mr. Bidet will share as well, about where we land for the FY25 budget. But right now, we're basing it on what we know. That is always subject to change. We are working with student populations, and it's not always as predictable as we would like. So the items that I'm going to talk about tonight is the rationale for putting this proposed budget together, budget history and comps, what a level services budget might look like, the town projected budget and deficit, priority needs that the administrative team and I put together and presented to you in January, and then capital requests for the town as well. So when we put the budget together, and the strategic plan is linked in there, just I try to always connect all the dots here, but we did closely look, as we've been trying to align all of our work to the 2022-2027 plan, which I can't believe we're actually in year 3 already. Well, we will be in year 3. And if you look at the priority needs, they're all tied directly to those strategic initiatives. We tried to really build in and make sure we're looking at those costs that we did not know were going to be so unpredictable this year for transportation tuition in FY24, which is also impactful to FY25. We're also still negotiating contracts. It was nice that we were able to share tonight that we did ratify the paraprofessional contract, which is great news and helps us place that in the budget, which we've done. But we have contracts that are not known at this point. And we're going to talk about how the town of Holliston is definitely experiencing financial challenges at this time, not unlike many of the districts surrounding us and the state and the country. This is all taken into consideration for what I'm proposing for the budget for next year. Mr. Bidet put together the cost per pupil for our comparable accept and tech districts, and this is the per pupil cost currently from FY23. And in Holliston, you can see where it is. So there's room to grow. We have limitations with the town forecast, and I'll talk about that, but you can see where we stand with some of the neighboring districts as well.
Now, one of the things that we had a lot of discussions on last year during the budget year was the 14% increase that the Operational Services Division, who does the pricing for out-of-district placements, recommended and put forward. So that 14% increase. Now, the legislature followed suit and did a 14% increase in circuit breaker reimbursement. So I just want to just kind of show you a situation that looks good, but may not be. So if you look at it, you take a typical $150,000 placement, you add the 14% to that, puts you at $171,000. So I gotta stand up for my this, can't help it. So here, with the $150,000 placement, we get a circuit breaker reimbursement of $75,000, and these are all big round numbers for now, and the district cost me $75,000. So you look at the 171, we get $90,000, and the district cost would be $80,000, but for that increase, again, while we're picking up $5,000 of it, you look at it, oh, it's only a 7% increase. Great, isn't that, it's like better. Well, the problem is that the 21% circuit breaker reimbursement, the state only put aside an additional 14%. So somebody has to eat that other 7, which comes back this way. It also doesn't account for any new students, which again, pushed it this way. So, pushed it, I should say, this way on, on the district cost. So this is where, while the 14% is great in theory, it doesn't necessarily mean anything positive for a district. The other piece is you have to know that the way that circuit breaker works, well, they included transportation in it now, which is when they did a big jump in circuit breaker 3-4 years ago and gradually rolled it in. The problem with the way they execute it from a transportation perspective is they make sure they get to the 75% reimbursement for tuition first, and then whatever's left over can go to transportation. So when they put 14% in, and we can see a simple case where they've already missed that number, transportation is getting scraps. So again, great in theory, in reality, it may not work out, whether it be new students or students that may get, end up in a more restrictive placement, where again, while they put 14% there, but a more restrictive placement puts a bigger number over here than that, again, we're still chasing a number that we're not reaching. So I just want to put that in front of you, just so you understand one of our biggest line items, both we have talked about special education, tuition, and transportation, that as much as the state is putting more money than they have in the past, it's still not offsetting the total increase in costs. So, thank you.
So I wanted to talk about a level services budget and what that really means to the layperson. I think we all know that because we deal with budgets in our personally daily life here at work. But a level service budget is defined as, we look at what the current year's level of services is, what staff we have here, what needs we have here currently, what we're managing for students, and we project that forward for one more year. That means what I'm proposing tonight is a level services budget that is necessary to maintain what we currently have. We have one slight add I'm going to talk about, but really, this is what it would take to keep our services consistent for students. So this is the chart, and I'll explain it a little bit more in depth, but if you look at our current FY24 appropriated budget, it's $40,529,934. Again, this is a ballpark estimate. It's a good, solid estimate, but until we get further into the budget season and settle more contracts, we won't have a final number. But we're estimating a $1,665,988 increase for salaries, which is about 72-ish% of our budget, and that's a 5.10% increase for FY25. Other fixed costs are coming in around $400,000, which is 8.30%. Special ed increases, this is what I explained to you a little bit earlier that I'm going to ask Jess to speak to as well. But we had those unforeseen transportation and tuition costs for a number of reasons, but Keith explained as well that 14% increase in tuition, and that is putting us going into FY25 at $922,314, which is a whopping 30.49% for those increases that were not planned for with these state changes, and for the changes in cost of transportation. So you can see the bottom line there. That means the level service to maintain services as we are today would be $43,517,951, or a 7.37% budget for FY25, which is certainly higher than we've seen in past years. So I did link in a couple of slides that Jess has put together for us that she's prepared to talk to and answer questions for you as well. Thank you, Jess.
So I put together this, you've seen this before, I've presented this, I just went back a little bit further so you could sort of see the growth. And I pleasantly surprised to see, although we're growing, it's not exponentially, right? So while that cost feels extremely high, I would like to explain why I feel those reasons are. It's not based because our out-of-district number is considerably much higher, but certainly due what Keith has said. But it's important to point out, when you look across the surrounding towns, we're well within that similar percentage of the amount of special ed kids versus gen ed. So we're not, over beyond our means there and overqualifying, which I think is really good. Next slide, sorry. So I just wanted to sort of outline some of the reasons so that you all could see it, the people at home could hear it without, it's a careful balance of really, it's confidential information, and I really need to, I take that very, very seriously. And so without giving away too much detail of kids' personal lives, you can see the reasons why these budget increases sort of took us a little bit by surprise. And I think the biggest thing that we can't account for is we are in the people business, and students and their behavior and how they're doing is unpredictable. And so much of the cost of what Keith was talking about a little bit earlier is that least restrictive to most restrictive. And so some of the costs that we really couldn't account for were places where we might have thought of an extended eval while the student was in that extended eval placement. It didn't go as well as we had hoped, right? And so they then needed to shift to a day placement. Some students who are in day placement were really, really struggling and needed to shift from day placement to residential. And when you look at the total cost of a placement like that, it is considerably high. The other piece is the 14%. Not all of them went up to 14%, but a lot of them did. And we're really starting to see a considerable amount of complex needs. And what I mean by that is that dual medical, behavioral, and social emotional combined, where it is actually more cost effective, believe it or not, to place the child and better for them to place them than it is to try to recreate all of these resources within district. So I am always a proponent of keeping our kiddos here, but there is that time where you have to really look at what is better for that child. When we looked at transportation costs, and you know, Keith is right, it is considerably high. And I have to say, when I walked into this position, we had many students on limousine services. We are, districts everywhere are struggling with transportation. You ask anybody in my job alike, that's the biggest thing, that's the biggest number, that's the biggest cost. I put that example in there because we had some students where it was $600 a day it was costing for us to transport that kiddo to and from. That's insane. A lot of it is due to gas prices. A lot of it is where the placement is located, what type of transportation we were using, and I have to give my coordinator, Michelle LeMay, tons of credit because she got every single student off of that limousine service and into transportation vehicles at a much better cost. We are seeing a significant increase in the need for monitors. We don't take that into consideration when we're thinking about transportation costs. But for a transportation company to provide a monitor for us, for a student, whether that's for their medical need or a behavioral need, is costly, and that's added to that cost for us. We have some students that need wheelchair accessible vehicles. Those are not only hard to find, but much more pricey. And then the locations of placement, so that's really cost dependent. For having somebody go from Holliston all the way into the city, it's a much greater price. And then our out-of-district move-ins across the board for both transportation and just out-of-district placement is not something we can predict. So a kiddo moves in that has been placed either long-term for a very long time or just recently. We own that until we can meet and talk about whether it is we can bring them back into district or not. But those are unexpected costs that I certainly faced last year and this year that are unavoidable for us. Any questions on that, or I don't know if you want me to wait or?
Just one, so if you
Yeah.
bring back up the first slide.
Yep.
You were here in October and you gave us an update on some numbers.
Yep.
And as of sort of the end of last year, you had 199 504s, 77 ELLs, but then it said 42 out of district. And but this now says 46. No, but this is the historical data.
Yeah. That I said last year, but I didn't present in June, so the number.
Right, but you were saying the 2023 school year.
Did you present in May? Is that in
No, this was
sure.
the October 5th one.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then that could have been a misnumber. That could be totally a mistake.
It also may be that when Jess and I true up our numbers, I count the Norfolk Aggie special needs children as out of district. And they're part of my out of district
Yep.
number because it's a sped cost for that. So that's where it falls on my end-of-year report. So it also may have been that she may have been truing up with that, and I don't
Yeah,
remember that.
I can look at them again and
Yeah,
give
because
back
the
to
other,
you.
well, the IEP number is slightly different too, but then the 504 is 199, the ELL is 77, but then it says 42. If you just, I'm just.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a
trying to
look
get
at it
an
again.
idea
You
of
can send
the
that
growth.
if something's.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I am just going to
I'm
go
sorry to
back.
put you on the spot.
It's okay. No, I'm happy to see it wasn't incredibly much different over the past 3 years, but I can get that exact number for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so going back to our level services budget, I'm going to continue on. So where are we on the town side for FY25? Well, our town administrator, as you know, has presented some of his placeholders for next year based on the revenue that we're seeing now for the town. We don't have a lot of industry, as we all know, in this town. There's not a lot of wiggle room. So he has modeled a 3.25% increase as a placeholder, and that's not guaranteed. We're hopeful that he'll get us to that 3.25%. That's what he's modeling, but that's still not guaranteed at this time. So with that number and the level service budget that I proposed to you tonight, we would be at a 4.12% deficit. This would mean a $1,670,794 reduction of the level services budget, and that's approximately 20 or more positions, which is not good for our students. This is also not taking into any consideration of any priority needs that we presented you on January 8th or thereabouts. But I still want to talk about that a little bit more. So I moved this around, but I did feel it was important to show you this before I go into the why of what I am still hoping to account for in next year's budget. These are all the items that we discussed with the community when we presented as a leadership team in January. Now, the communication, cybersecurity, we do still need to do that. So Mr. McLeod will be able to manage that $15,600 from revolving funds. We have all these other items under social emotional well-being and teaching and learning and talent and resources. All of those numbers together, without the cybersecurity in place, would be $487,500 of new priority needs, which again, not to be bleak, but it's not accounted for in that level services budget. So if we're already talking potential cuts of 20 positions, I can't support this amount of needs for the district. But one that I am asking you to consider is the BCBA that we put on that list. And the BCBA position for next year that I'm going to let Jess speak to why we are asking for this district-wide is a $75,000 estimate. And this, if we did add this position to the level service budget, that would get us to the bottom line there, which would be a 7.56% increase for next year. So why am I still trying to find a way to find this BCBA position for the district? Jess, can you tell us that?
Sure. Oh, this is going to be a good pitch. No. I really feel strongly in talking with a lot of our staff within the district, administrators, the BCBAs. This is a very much needed position, and when I sit through my job alikes, it's something that every district is looking for. We understand that students and their SEL needs is huge at this point, and you heard me talk when we were talking about priority needs, is we do have wonderful counselors here, right? And they have those clinical skills, and what we now need is more of that behavioral lens so that we are being more proactive as opposed to reactive. And we're looking at what is the function of the child's behavior, and that's exactly what the BCBA is trained to do. Where a counseling clinician is more or less providing that skill development, the BCBA and counselor can work in tandem to identify what the behavior is, what is the function of it, what is that child trying to tell us, and then working with counselors, which you see through, I talk about right there is our AIM training, is something huge that Victoria Briggs and Erin Conant, our BCBAs, have brought in. We did a lot of professional development in January. We had in learning agency come in and teach the AIM training, which is accept, identify, and move. And it's essentially the blending of social emotional mindfulness training with that behavior piece, that behavior analysis piece. So they run groups in tandem with counselors across the lower levels. We want to grow that so that we're getting more bang for our buck and helping our middle school and high school kids as well. So when we look at the current 2 BCBAs across the district, their caseload is at 60 students already. This includes other things that they need to do, are consultations that are on their IEPs with families and staff. They are required to complete FBAs that come from, many come from our SAT team meetings and our special ed meetings. And for those of you that don't know, it's a functional behavioral assessment, which is very, very time consuming. And the essence of that is to determine what the function of a child's behavior is. In talking with Victoria and Erin, give me a ballpark, 12 to 15 plus hours to do one. The clinical observations, which is a little less stringent upon them. It's more of that looking at their record review, doing an observation of the kids right there in class and giving some feedback. And from that often comes those behavioral support plans, 5 to 7 hours each. So they're spending lots and lots of time doing really wonderful work. But when they get drawn to do that, then they can't do the hands-on direct service work with staff and students, and so it's this push-pull. Additionally, we've worked really hard to restructure our continuums to create those places for students so that we are not losing them to out of district, but that leaves 2 people to help oversee continuums in all 4 buildings, 3 continuums in all 4 buildings, which is, as you can imagine, is really challenging. And so what we find is that there are often these gaps where they can only get to so many buildings in 5 days and spend good considerable amount of time there helping our students and our staff. The other thing that they do a lot of is professional development. They're also our safety care trainers, so they are providing that training throughout the district to ensure that we are in compliance, so that when we do need to, unfortunately ever, do an escort or put hands on a child that is dysregulated, we need to make sure that our staff are trained to do that, because when that happens and they're not, we would be in big trouble. And so they provide all of that training, which can be a half a day to a couple of day training, depending upon whether the staff has been trained or not, so if it's an initial or a recert. I talked about the AIM groups, and then they also do a lot of collaboration and coordination with home-based care providers. So when students in their IEPs have ABA at home, our BCBAs are the ones that are making sure that's happening and collaborating with them to say, what are you working on with them at home, so that we can then work on that with them here at school. So providing that additional BCBA, I don't need to read all of that to you, but really is going to strengthen the work of many people that is only being done by 2 people in this district. And I think what we would see in getting that position is a much more fluent and aligned process over every building, and carryover from grade to grade to building, so that students are not losing the work that they're gaining when they're younger, and able to carry that through Miller Middle and the high school. So with that, we feel strongly that this, of all positions, is something that would be more of a proactive preventative measure of helping support our kids and our staff with the behavior concerns going on.
And I mean, this is not just COVID. We've been struggling pre-COVID as well, but now add the students that were born during COVID
that.
or didn't get socialization in their early years and are now in our schools. So it's not surprising that this is a need. My daughter-in-law is a BCBA and used to be in Canton Public Schools, is now in private, and it really is something that we're seeing a growing need for in every community.
Every community, yeah. And I think what's hard is between two people, they're trying to find the balance of where they needed most. And the reality is they're needed everywhere in this district. And so, you know, the urgency tends to be the littles, right? But then when we focus down there, we're forgetting about those middle and high school kids that are really struggling as well. So it's important that, you know, we put those services in place to help capture that and reduce our costs on the other end.
Thank you, Jess. Any questions for Jess? And because I'm going to let her leave when she feels ready.
Anything special to add? Okay. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess.
I'm sure there will be down the line.
I know. I'll get you those numbers, though. I'll make sure they're
Thank you.
accurate. Yep.
Moving on to capital requests, and just for those in the audience that are listening, when we talk about the level service budget, the appropriation budget, that is the cost, with the majority is personnel, but those are long-term needs. Capital requests are one-time funds and are not part of our appropriation budget. So the amount that we have put together for capital requests, again tied directly to our strategic plan and initiatives, is $481,700. Under Arch 2 for teaching and learning, you'll see a large number is pre-K to 12 math materials, and that is because we have not reviewed and purchased new math materials since 2011. And we also know that we have a large increase in our ELL population. I showed you the demographic change as well. So we really need to be mindful of trying to make sure that everything is accessible to our students. So we do need to purchase a translation copier at $5,700, which seems obvious that would be a need in this day and age with our students. For teachers, when they're putting together materials for their students, coming in with different languages, to be able to translate those immediately. We're also in the review process for science and world languages, so we have estimated about $35,000 for science and $30,000 for world language materials. And then we are also looking to change our math and ELA diagnostic tool. Currently, we're using STAR, but STAR is really just working as a diagnostic tool. It's been helpful. And during COVID, when we were trying to get a sense of how to put our kids into Tier 1 and Tier 2 Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, it was a helpful tool to get us started because we really didn't have an ongoing progress monitoring tool that would work for this. But what the tools that we're looking for now would really provide us not only the diagnostic tool, but then the ability to do some of that Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction to free up the teachers so that they can really support Tier 3 and then also the whole group instruction that they need. So that arch of materials would cost us $250,700. And under Arch 4, every year we know we come back, or every other year sometimes, looking for additional technology. It's constantly changing and evolving, and it only lasts a certain amount of time. So we will be looking to get our instructional staff and our administrators new laptops. We have an opportunity to get an $86,000 rebate, which is great because I had this number much higher initially. So with the rebate, we'll be able to, we're asking for $221,000 to fill that need. And then some infrastructure that is also a new need at $231,000 total. So I know that's a lot to digest.
Questions on that?
And we're happy to answer questions as best as we can.
So, obviously, this is some tough numbers, but this is just the beginning. But that being said, do people have any initial questions, thoughts, comments?
Numbers are concerning. That's all. I'll start there.
Any specific ones, or just all of them?
I mean, all of them generally. It's a 7.37 for a level service budget is, I mean, I think that's the highest level service budget I've seen since I've been on the committee. Does that sound about right?
It's high. I think what we're seeing in the MASC information that we're getting is that across the board in many other districts, the numbers are coming in high. And I think what they, they've mentioned that the increase in special ed costs and special ed transportation are the main drivers of that. As we start to see different towns struggling with their percentages coming in.
I mean, the special ed and other fixed costs, which, those are transportation and heating, utilities and stuff like that. That's half of the increase, or a little less, but sort of half of the increase. And there's still big unknowns within the salary line too.
And I think obviously as we get closer to knowing where our budget would be appropriated for next year, that's at town meeting, that gets us into May, we would then have to determine, I mean, we're looking at some layoffs, that's the bottom line, but hopefully we'll come up with some creative solutions before we get to that point and be able to narrow that down with some creative solutions. But it's ultimately, I mean, where we are right now, those numbers are what we're estimating.
I mean, we've been having conversations on the town side, looking for creative solutions, some ideas, but on the town side, it's a really tough budget year too. I mean, I know that the select board had a day of reviewing their budgets and the finance committee's in the process, but we are running into some significant headwinds on the town side as far as just tax revenue goes. New growth was at least a 5-year low, but actually probably one of the lowest new growth numbers that I can recall ever seeing in the past 12 years that I've been in town government. There was a sort of a clawback from some challenges to the increases and some large increases that happened last year that helped fund some things, but now is a headwind. So the town is itself looking at an $800,000 headwind, kind of from what it sort of normal would have been. And then other cost increases are just significant. We're sending a lot of more students to Keith Tech. We have, health insurance costs are never easy, but they're going up. Let's see what else. I think the town right now, putting in even us at 3.25%, I think is in the $1 to $1.5 million deficit right now before sort of cutting things back. And so, where do they find that? A lot of it is probably going to be found in the capital set aside, which obviously has negative implications for some of the things that we're trying to do. It's a really, really tough budget year overall. And combined with the fact that we wrote the letter to our state reps, with our Chapter 70 number coming in at 0.9%, that certainly does not help the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa.
I think it's important to know on the BCBA that a big part of their responsibilities are doing FBAs, which are, if those are part of a child's IEPs, we have to do them, and we pay a lot more for those if we have to do them through contractors. So that cost, seeing the number of what it would cost to hire a BCBA isn't, you have to take into account that there is some cost savings there too.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. We would have to pay hourly at a very high rate, and so yes, adding at a time when we're struggling is not ideal, but we would be paying either way at a much higher number to get those done because it's legally
Right. And they don't know the students, so they have to spend even more time with them because they're not within the district.
Right. Anything else right now? Obviously, it's a lot.
Well, I feel strongly we need the BCBA, so whatever way that we can continue to do that, we should.
So the
But-
process here is that we have about a month, a little more than a month before we present the school committee recommended budget to the finance committee. So over the next month, we'll be working on trying to sort of hone those numbers. Obviously, there are a lot of different factors that could change those numbers. And once we then present our recommended budget to the finance committee, that then kicks off another month of continued kind of conversations and negotiations and trying to sort of figure it out to get to where we need to be at town meeting. But
We also need to start thinking about dates for office hours, at least 3 or 4 different dates, probably in March. usually we do March, right? Maybe
we do.
one in April. So we really probably, when we get to communications tonight, maybe we can start picking some dates.
We're supposed to present our budget, do a
Yes.
budget hearing
We didn't do a budget hearing.
first week of April, I believe. First meeting of April, I believe.
It's going to be first meeting in April. I think that might end up being after the finance committee presentation, but
Yeah, it's going to be like April, whatever it is, April 4th.
Yeah.
I think that's right. So we usually try to have like 3 different before then. Of course, we can have some after, but we do typically have like 3.
and I think this year there are going to be a lot of questions. I mean, it's and look, a lot can change. We're having some constructive conversations with the teachers union, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But big unknowns. We have to find a solution, but obviously, yeah.
And what about capital? Any specific questions on the capital?
Yep, later tonight, or we can even pull it up now if you want to do it, but we should, so the schedule is that I think the capital subcommittee of the finance committee is meeting next week, and it asked for our capital number. So Dr. Custer's presented her recommended capital number. We can, I think it would be best if we voted one. Again, this is still going to go through the process based upon how much money they end up having and are allocated to capital.
Well, I was going to say we should probably prioritize that list as well, in the sense that if they have to actually end up using capital for.
Yep. I just thought you guys hated to prioritize.
There's no choice here.
I'm saying we should prioritize
No,
it.
we
not
absolutely
that you
should
that you never mind. You know what I meant.
Would they
We can
just quote a
prioritize for us.
number?
What's that?
Would they just say what they could afford?
They
or-
can, but then we need to prioritize
Right,
our number.
once we get
I'm not
there.
asking the
Capital's-
finance committee to prioritize
Right.
it.
Capital-
I'm asking for us.
No, I understand, but the finance committee used to ask the school committee to prioritize things. Anyway,
Go forward with this.
Yes.
And then
so
prioritize at a later date.
capital is slightly different also than obviously the operating budget, because the town doesn't get to just choose a number for us and then we spend it how we want it. It's actually on the
No,
each
I
side
know,
of the priority.
but just given where
Right.
we're at, if we're suggesting that we would be taking, that one of the levers would be to take whatever we allocated for capital projects and saying we need to put it into, I mean, if that's even an option.
No, I don't think that's the town is talking about how they allocate the sort of the town's funds and how much they're going to be able to put into capital set aside.
Yeah.
That's not, that impacts us in
Right.
an indirect way, but,
Yes.
so, I mean, we're
So they might say, we're only going to give you
suggestions.
$250 this year instead of, whatever it is we're asking, $480.
Right. So I don't think we need to prioritize right now.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
we should be.
I mean, I guess the question I would have is just right now, people, as they look at this, see anything that they disagree with being on our list of capital requests. I think that's sort of,
This has gone through budget too.
yeah.
No, I
Sorry,
believe, yeah, I'm
Can I
not,
just ask quickly, are the laptops, is that every year? Like,
No.
no.
why is it this year
No,
so much?
Admin ones were like
One of
4 or
them-
5 years ago.
The current laptops, the current staff laptops are 4 years old.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're really getting at their end of their lives. I mean, they're opened every day, they're carried everywhere, they're not a stationary device any longer. So they're reaching the end of their physical life anyway, for sure. The other piece is, again, we have this remaining ECF funds. That was part of COVID money from the federal government for emergency connectivity fund. And so it's helping us to, it helped us during the COVID years. Now this is the last, and the last bit of it. We have to receive these devices by June 30. If they are not in hand, we can't get the money. So, if we turn this down now, we'll be back in the fall, but without the 86,000.
So I should have mentioned that the budget subcommittee has voted to recommend all these capital items. We haven't put a prioritization list, but we can certainly work on that. The one thing I would also say about the laptops that I'd asked Dan about is these are actually 2-in-1s, so they fold over to become sort of tablets. So teachers then have the ability to be more mobile in the classroom itself and bring the laptop around. And so it's a value add in that sense as well.
I think they're about $1,071, and our rebate would be $400 per, which is a really substantial
Yep.
rebate for.
And so our request was to to vote on the capital pieces tonight, and I hear you on the prioritization. I think we're going to attempt to have at least 2 budget meetings before we come back on March 14th, and we can do a preliminary run at prioritization and then make the case for that before the March 14th meeting too. But are there additional questions you have on any of these? I mean, some of it a lot of it actually was presented both by Dan and Joni back in January earlier this year. And some of those prices we were still floating then, but we've done the work in budget subcommittee that we feel like we're ready to present this to you with these
And the other thing
prices.
that we've looked at is we've looked at the playgrounds, we've looked at the track. What were the other?
We've had discussions about both the Adams roof and the subsequent work still that needs to be done on the Western Railroad roof. So I mean, we have covered a lot.
We have covered a lot. And so for like the track, we have, sort of funds that, sort of have been built to pay for, to replace the track and pay for other athletic things that we think can cover that. The playground, similarly so.
And the playgrounds still we're working on.
And so it would
too,
still be a
with
work in
assessments.
progress, but it hasn't been forgotten. That was a big topic of conversation and concern. So that is on our radar and being addressed. The high school, the wall out, not the auditorium wall, but the wall outside the high school. Mr. Burdet's been updating us, but it's been pinned to be structurally sound, and we just got bids in, and we're to actually have the water proofing done, or we're fixing of those leaks. There are other things that are outside of this that are getting done and being addressed. They're not falling off. The one thing that I think correctly is not on this list, but is something that could come up is the auditorium lighting. The problem is it's a huge ask, $250,000 ask, and if we're still moving forward with an SOI, it becomes one of those things. How much money do you put into a building that may not be there?
If we can't take it with us.
Right.
Some of that stuff I think we could. I think that was.
We've asked them apparently.
No.
The most expensive thing, which would be the dimming racks, would be built for that particular application. So the likelihood of being able to be moved or moved easily would be, may not be worth it, truthfully.
And at this time, we feel like we need to prioritize the curriculum needs, right?
Right.
So.
No, I don't want to be clear. I don't disagree with any things. I'm just thinking, like, as I'm looking at those big numbers that,
Yeah, it's an important point, and we'll definitely look at it.
And also, we had a conversation with Keith and Susan about the current laptops, because they're getting old and towards the end of their life, but that doesn't mean that they're useless, and especially if you rebuild them and whatnot. And so there are other individuals in the building who have either Chromebooks or something else that those could be repurposed for.
But they are at the end of their life, and they would need new batteries and need and
it would cost us.
repurpose
Yeah.
everything.
No.
I mean, they're not just going to go in the scrap heap.
Right.
I mean,
That's what I mean.
there's a further story coming. Dan's been investigating whether or not the company may want to buy them back from us. And then obviously then lower our $220,000 ask. So it's, again, this is ongoing. We just need to kind of put a stick in the ground for here and keep going. So.
Okay.
Do you have more?
Do you need us to vote? Is this what you're looking
So
for?
technically, this is under the budget, so just to
let's
be
do that.
clear, it's on the agenda. So if you were willing to, I would entertain a motion to take as the school committee's recommended capital request of $481,700 for curriculum needs as well as laptops
Technology.
and other technology.
Moved by Cynthia.
Second.
All's in favor? That carries 7-0 with Minnie now joining us. Well, a while ago, but
Nice.
Wow.
zingers all around
It's
tonight.
facts.
Any other questions about, but anything that the committee would like the budget subcommittee to look at or consider, any kind of, I know sometimes,
Straw into gold.
anything you can do to take us off the hook.
Bake sale?
Yeah.
We could use some for that for capital, but you can't raise money like that and use for operations, so.
I know, I meant for.
No.
No, thank you, guys.
Well, and thank you to Dr. Kuska and Mr. Boudet, because they put in a ton of time on this too. So much more to come on the budget for the community. So don't.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on.
But we have, Mr. List, who is has a wrong name tag in front of him right now, but
That's all right. Here.
I assume that this is the next.
Yes.
This is our next presentation, and this is something that I know that the school committee had asked Mr. List to come and talk about. And so he's willing to just share a presentation on an idea that you had requested on a schedule potential for the high school. Oh, did I
It's
not
the link
share?
is from the agenda.
Sorry, I didn't share yet. Okay, thank you, Principal List, for being here.
Thank you all for having me. I think like 3 times in a row. Always my
Frequent flyer.
Yeah.
You come back every time.
As I said, 3 times in a row, and that's because, the first time I got to talk about the NEASH report, the next time was about the mid-year report, and now here on the schedule. And I think, rightfully so, it was requested to understand more about the challenges that exist within our current schedule, because it was very clear in the equity audit, very clear in the NEASH report, that we have some challenges to address. And so, it was asked by me at the last school committee meeting to share those challenges that exist within the schedule, and what would be the impact of switching to an AP schedule. What that would mean is that right now our classes run every day. It's 4 periods a day. What this would be is a day 4 classes, different classes on a B day, 4 classes would run. So that's where we ended up here for 3 times in a row. So what I wanted to do is give you just a visual of what these schedules look like. Look at the benefits and challenges of both of these schedules, and then talk about, as requested, the sort of impact of making a switch at this time. And sort of all of this is under the piece of what is equitable and supports the needs of students and teachers. And that's really what the equity audit and the NEASH report asked us to kept sort of bringing up over and over again, is equity under the lens of equity of experience, equity of access, and equity of supports for students. So that's really where this comes from, and that's sort of the question this guides this work. Right now on the left side is our current Bell schedule, and then on the right is a possible AB schedule. Really, DSB can move anywhere in there, but I just put it right at the start of the day. But again, that would be 8 blocks, 3 lunches. It's very much the current high school schedule, just an AB day. It's run by a few schools in the area, but this would be sort of the Holliston version of it. So just looking at there are obviously lots of different reasons that people like schedules. There is no perfect schedule. But it has 4 classes, just thinking about sort of the stress we talk about on students, and only having 4 classes to take. Students will tell you they really like that. When we look at the current schedule, any study you read on block schedule talks about deeper learning that exists, time to build a relationship because you meet every day. There is some flexibility in the schedule because classes run 1, 2, and 3 different terms, 3 quarters. What you'll notice is that some of the benefits of these are also some of the challenges of these too. And so you see they run 3 terms. You do have students have the opportunity for more collaboration time in block scheduling. Teachers have time for collaboration. And then the remediation opportunities that exist because you can take a class a second time. So it doesn't work out first semester, you could, in theory, take it second semester. Retake that class, and just the time the teachers have planning for the 3 classes that they currently teach. Challenges, continuity of learning. As the NEASH report said, the equity audit said, when you look at our classes, if you take French 2, you could be a year before you take French 3. there's a lack of continuity there. Same thing for ELA, for sciences, you could run into that issue. So there really is, we recognize that, and I will say, honestly, the staff also recognizes those challenges that exist. And an absenteeism issue, so if you think about a block schedule, you miss one class, technically, that's 2 classes. And so that is something that needs to be talked about. Covering the curriculum. I mean, when you're talking about limiting days, anytime you're doing that, you don't have the full access to days. And understanding, we need a better understanding of how we use the time to see make sure we're covering all the curriculum. If you look at our math curriculum right now in our math department, it takes like Algebra 1, Part 1 and Part 2. So it takes the entire year there. So that's a challenge that exists.
Mr. List, to your point, can I just add like an example, like if you're missing 2 classes for 1, so if you were sick for a week, you'd miss 10 classes worth of math versus spreading it over the years.
Right. Access to fine arts, performing arts, the way the schedule's built now, you have 4 classes. So, you fit everything in as a freshman and you put everything in, there's not a lot of options there. And then on top of that, for performing arts, the band and chorus exist within DSB, which is supposed to be supports for students. So how are you have to make a choice. And yes, schedules are full of choices. But again, when we think about equity of access and opportunity, that doesn't exist with this schedule. Special education services, same kind of thing. If you are assigned during DSB, then you don't get to go to other teachers during DSB. You don't get access to band and chorus. Equity of access, equity of opportunity, those pieces there. Tiered intervention supports. One of our focus this year at the high school is to really understand what supports we have in place for students. And when you look at the schedule, any schedule that's just 4 classes and you're filling those, where do you find time for tiered supports? Right? You have DSB, you go for extra help, but where can we find time for other supports for students? Both outside the class, inside the class, or just where does that fit? Students who need sort of higher level of those tier 2 supports, where does that fit in? And so that's really an issue that we face. Scheduling conflicts, as you know, we have classes that run 1 term, classes that run 2 terms, classes that run 3 terms. When you think of that as a visual, as a puzzle, it's like a game of Tetris, like where do those classes fit? And so you end up with scheduling conflicts. And then, I think hearing from staff and from students a lot of times, like it's a long time. 77 minutes is becoming a struggle for students to focus for that time. So the AB schedule, with an AB, again, you're not stopping midway through the year to then start anew. So you can have access to something like band or chorus because it runs throughout the year, just every other day. So it moves those from that space. Again, when you look at what studies look at block scheduling, they talk about the complexity and depth of activities and deeper learning that exists within block scheduling in general. The relationship building, yes, that exists on the everyday. But when you have it for the year, you're able to think about that stretched out even longer for students. And so the flexibility in learning, again, the 8 classes, because they operate on every other day, you have more opportunities that you don't run into some of those scheduling conflicts that exist. You also have some of those flexibility in terms of your classes run. You don't have like 1, 2, 3 term classes. You have semester classes. I know this is confusing, which were like 1 term classes.
Yeah.
Those become
and a full year.
Yeah, and then you have full year classes. So there's no 3 term classes. And so I apologize, it's confusing, but it's taken me a long time to wrap my head around it being new. But you eliminate that 3rd term class, and it spreads it out to sort of what a schedule would look like sort of in most districts in terms of semester classes and year long classes. And I apologize if it's really confusing for that. When you think about balanced workload, you have every other day, and so you're talking about time built in and balance over that time. Right now, you could have 4 really intense classes one semester and not the other semester. Here, you can look at some balance over different days as well. And the tiered intervention supports, again, because you're running 8 classes at that time, you can fit other things in because it's not like it happens later in 4th term. Does that make sense? Okay, sorry. Doesn't happen in fourth term. You need support first term, but you can't get it till fourth term. So it fits in there in one of those periods. Special education services don't have to happen during DSB, and opportunities to access, counseling during that DSB time or throughout the days.
And if I'm not mistaken, for AP classes that are half year, one of the concerns was that if you ended in the mid-year and then they don't take their AP exams until later in the year, this at least spreads that content out for the full year.
Yeah, it's full year, right? It's a full year class, yeah.
That's another area to talk about.
So what you'll notice is many of the actual challenges from our current schedule exist in our AP schedule too. One is that students now have 8 classes at a time instead of 4. That's a reality that we would have to address. I mean, that's a social emotional wellness when we're looking at how that impacts students. The absenteeism issue, like, yes, if you miss classes every day, if you miss 5 days, right now it's like 10 days of classes. If you miss 5 days in an AB, it's like 2.5 days of classes. So it still is something, it still is an issue that we would need to address. Special education services, it would move special education services like learning center and learning supports all into the like a regular period class. So you're talking about 77 minutes. So one period of 77 minutes of support every other day. And so it's a lot of learning center for students. The remediation opportunity I talked about before, meaning like retaking a class, if you struggle, something like that kind of disappears because they're now year-long classes versus semester. Again, something that's been brought up to me by students and teachers is the student focus over 77 minutes. And just teacher preparation, because right now, like, it's something we'd have to think about because teachers right now teach 3 out of 4 per semester. This will be 6 out of 8 for the year. So if you average 65 to 75 students, you could have 130 to 150 students, and that's a reality we have to address. So I put on the left there the schedule change process. This is something that I shared, I think, when I presented the NEOS report, where I presented sort of our plan to look at this over the end of the rest of this year and the beginning of next year. So that's that plan process there. And to answer sort of the big question of what's that was asked of me, what is the impact of this change? If we were to make the change, what do we have to think about? And really we look at this is adjustment for students and teachers. Students are resilient and they're malleable and can change on a dime, but 4 to 8 is something that we need to think about in terms of social emotional wellness and health for these students. It'll open up the question about just simply, I sent out an email to parents and I asked for feedback on the schedule, and somebody's whole paragraph plus that they wrote me was that their student wanted more access to AP classes because the current schedule has the 3 term classes, which limits that. And so when you think about an AB schedule, you got a student take 5 AP classes, 6 AP classes technically, because they run that time. So that's just thinking about that balance that we would need to look at for students. And again, for teachers, as we're talking about 6, planning and prepping and grading for 6 classes. How does that impact our staff? That's a big question. As someone who's done a lot of work in scheduling, just the back end of getting all of this into the system and changing scheduling is a huge endeavor that we've started the work already, and that goes through the spring and into the summer for scheduling. And so whenever you're building a new type of schedule, that's a major lift that I don't know. I've talked to some other school districts and that have switched from block scheduling, and it's a major shift that exists on the technical pieces, not just the academic or the social emotional, but the actual back end of that. One thing that started to think a lot about when I was asked to look at this was about the course progression. So right now, a student, for example, comes in, they take Algebra 1, 2 for a full year, Geometry for a full year. Junior year, they want to take Algebra 2, and they decide they really want to take Calculus, so they can take pre-calc after their Algebra 2. They then have their senior year to then engage with Calculus. Switching to the AB schedule, right now, we're not in algebra for all in 8th grade, so the majority of students come in at Algebra 1. That means the sophomore year, they're taking geometry, junior year is Algebra 2, senior year is pre-calc. That is, it limits the ability for that course progression there. We're also thinking about, and it's a big decision to be made to decide to limit that progression. And again, there are conversations that need to be had. Like if the district is doing Algebra 1 for all in 8th grade, then you can sort of there's some maneuvering that can exist in 9th grade to then move it forward, but that's something to address. And even looking at course progression for students who might want to engage in work and challenge themselves with work. Right now, you can take an English class, you could double up on an English class, you could, because of that the semesterized format. But so we'd have to look at what the impact is there. But I do know in math there would be a huge impact in having to understand how we even do math class. And again, because also it's confusing. Right now, a student gets 180 days of 77 minutes a day of math in freshman and sophomore year. In an AB schedule, they get 90 days, 77 minutes. So we have to just look at the curricular piece of that and making sure that we're getting to all of that content.
It is a little bit unusual, though, because typically they're not getting, for students that are math phobics, we're making them double up on math can also be painful for some of them. So, there's
it's just the piece that we have to look at. And it is unusual that kids get as much as we have right now, but it would just be one of Dr. Cuss is right, it's unusual that what they get right now comparatively. Things like graduation requirements, we'd have to spend some time looking at the impact on these classes and how that, I don't know the answer, to be honest. I don't know what happens to graduation requirements, again, the technical impacts. Also just stakeholder buy-in, making sure that the voices are heard of the community, the students, really the students, they're why we're all sitting here, making sure that they have time to feedback, understand what the impact is for them. Again, going back to teacher and student preparation, making sure that teachers and students are prepared for whatever shift it is that might happen. Resource allocation, we haven't built the schedule, so I don't know. I don't know what it does to what we need for labs, what we need for books, what we need for classes. I just don't know the answer to that. And then I would say is like the potential for reversion. If we don't have stakeholder buy-in necessarily, just being aware that if you make a change and it goes poorly, people tend to go back to what they felt comfortable with and really fight for that. And would people say, okay, well, this isn't working, but we really just want to go back to what we had, and then we are then again facing the challenges that I talked about earlier. So that would be the possible impact there. And so what I'd say is, at the end of all of this, like, everyone acknowledges there are challenges. That's the reality. Like, everybody acknowledges there are challenges and we have to address them. And we just have to come up with a way to, how we address them is through looking at different opportunities within schedules and within our schedule and what schedules might exist, and taking time to do that. But it's really about our values, what we value, and what we want to move forward with, and really whatever schedule we end up with, whenever that is, it has to be one that is done through the voices and thinking about the students, and is really student-centered, is around the values that we have as a school system, and one that supports the needs of all, like the NIASH report and equity audit all said we need to do. And so I apologize for talking quickly, but that sort of tried to sort of give an overview of the schedules, and then what that, answering that question of what an impact to the AB schedule would change at right this second. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
For a minute, but
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to add, so I think, now we've heard this, well, personally, I've dealt with, in other high school settings, block scheduling, came about many, many, many years ago, and many districts have moved away from it for a variety of reasons, not necessarily fitting the needs of today's students. I haven't dealt with one that is the schedule that we have, which is a half year of the 3 terms. I've always had the day on, day off, which is still not ideal. I think the reason we're having this conversation now is we're hearing from the community. We have the Equity Steering Committee. We are obviously very concerned with the inequities that we many of us knew were there, but now it's staring us in the face. So we have to decide what is it that we want to do now. I think if we had the time, like we need to go through and work as a team to develop the best schedule, which is never going to be perfect. Time is not on our side right now if we want to deal with some of the inequities for next year. It could be done. This schedule is close enough as far as not modifying the contract language and being able to manage the needs of planning periods and student needs and things like that. So we could do this. Is it a good time? Is it urgent enough for the inequities that we are trying to address with some of these changes that we want to make this change for next year? If we did, I suspect that if we decided that this would get us some of these inequities addressed for next year, and then we still would want the whole year to go through and see if this is the real schedule we get into. I suspect this would not be the permanent schedule, regardless of whether we tried to do. This could be a 1-year potential change, but it may not be the final change either way.
All right, I'm going to try to be quick, but I have to talk about math, as you did a lot. Right now, we're in Algebra 1 in 8th grade for none school district. We do not offer a full algebra course in 8th grade, which would mean that if we were to go to this next year and students were only able to take all Algebra 1 in 9th grade, 0 students in the class of 2028 would take calculus. Rankings, dead. To me, that's a stop. It's going to have to force us to relook at our math curriculum and our math course progression, and so that we can have a full algebra curriculum in 8th grade, but we don't now. We don't see that happening for next year, so.
Yeah, and I think
my vote is no.
I think you heard Principal Dr. Jordan talk about that is, I think, something that we do feel for equity, that students should be getting Algebra 1, and all students in 8th grade would be better. So.
Right now, none are, so. That means no calculus. That's sad. I don't know if it does it though mean
Yes.
no?
So it does. I mean,
Because like if you were talking about doubling up, like if people wanted,
it's
you
hard
could double
to-
up on Geo and Algebra
Yeah,
too.
you could double up on Geo and Algebra 2 in theory. It just becomes difficult. It's not an easy pathway for
Right. No, I agree.
students to undertake. And again, looking at we're talking about social emotional wellness of students, and then you're saying to, it's possible we're saying to our students, like a current 9th grader right now who's used to taking 4 classes and then 4 classes, like you're taking now Algebra 2 and Geometry at the same time. And then does that limit their other classes? I think that's just, it's one of the impacts that exists within what exists. As I said, what I brought this forward was really just to be transparent about what the impacts are when doing this and making any change.
So I think too, wouldn't it impact any of the kids who are currently at the high school who are hoping to take calculus at some point? Like,
who are thinking,
you'd
I'll
have to
take
be
Algebra
really
2 and
careful about how
pre-calc.
they-
Right, there's a lot of
how
kids in the
their
building to do that,
courses-
yeah.
And you can't take
be
Algebra 2
limited as
concurrently
well.
with pre-calc.
You can't do that now.
Can you take geometry concurrently with pre-calc?
No.
No.
You could take Geometry with Algebra 1 if you wanted to double.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you could, right, but
The teachers would have to redesign the curriculum
Yes.
though, because like right now, geometry involves problems involving solving systems and factoring. which
Yes,
is
yeah.
skills.
But
Math
there's
ruins
limitations to taking, even getting through like Algebra 2, or, anyway, like if you wanted to take 3 APs and those were all 3-term classes, like you may not be able to even fit algebra into your schedule that year.
because you wanted to take an AP and something else. Do you know what I mean? So it's.
I mean, right, there is no perfect, right?
There
is no
no.
perfect. I think the reality of all this, like, is we're not going to find perfect. That's why it's looking at what do we value as a school, and that's why I said, like, looking at this, I did have a chance to talk to David Jordan about, like, we talked about math and why I asked him that question. I asked him about, realgebra for all or close to it or not. So that's where that came up. So it's really about the overarching values of the school and the community and deciding, how that drives what work we do. And keeping in mind, I think, the student voice in this too. Like a lot of times, in the survey I got from parents, like there were some comments about, yes, I get my kid loves it, it's 4 classes, but they're teenagers, they don't always know, kind of things. And yes, that's true sometimes, but it's also they have to live it. And so we really have to have that voice in there to understand the impact and to understand what their values are in their high school experience. And we do need to address some of those whose values are the performing arts. And those who,
are the things we're not able to do.
I'll say it out loud, like I came into the district, it was like, you have a French immersion program, but you might have a year between your French classes.
Right.
I don't get it. Like, we know that
Struggling
continuity is
learners.
hugely an issue. Like, that's a challenge. We have to address that.
Right.
And that's
this would help with some of our special ed services, our fine and performing arts. It would help with students that cannot handle the regression with the year gap between things like math and foreign languages.
Right.
I also would say that we had that whole rankings discussion, and I think Mr. List, you sat through that with us as well. If this current schedule were the right schedule, with our kids getting double math and then a year and a half in the grades, then our ranking should be higher. So I mean, so I think there's a lot of things we're going. So there's no right answer at this point. I guess my point being is that we may want to minimally consider, do we have an expectation around students that take AP classes to at least take one AP test? Because that is something that's really holding back students' performance.
But this is a little bit outside, because I know this was looking just at making a change to an AP schedule. Why do we have 3-term AP classes?
In theory, that's a year and a half of instruction, which makes me wonder why our math AP rankings aren't higher.
I know that the test, it helps you get your class with, do you know?
Because we don't really cover a year's worth of material in a semester.
So one of the limitations of a block schedule, so if you, when the block schedules were originally 30 years ago, the big thing, 35 years ago, the big thing, classes were between 80 and 90 minutes per block. There was no such thing as DSBs really, or the study halls in there. And when you look at the minute time on learning, you're talking about 1,000 more minutes over the year than what our students get in, like, give or take, right? Depending on how many minutes you had, some are longer, some are shorter. So, and that, we don't really cover. And science, like science labs, when you talk about like an AP Chem, AP Bio, some of those labs there's extra time. Even in like, so even in some of the block schedules that exist where they're every other day, you still have time where the labs take extra time beyond that.
Even in all schedules, you have some AP.
Yeah, science, yeah. So that's all schedules.
But then, if you go back to our equity audit, right, and this is why we're having this conversation in the NEAS, but if you think of a glaring inequity in the current schedule, regardless of what we do moving forward, the fact that our AP students, who are usually our higher achieving students, are getting a year and a half instruction, and maybe our more needy students are not, when they might need more. It's another inequity that's not getting us the results, I think, that we should be getting.
And I would also say that, when you are condensing a course in limited amount of time, kids also do not get as much practice as they should. And I think that definitely affects their performance, because the focus, I think, comes into play there, because what you can do in a smaller amount of time versus what you can actually learn over a period of time, because it gives you more exposure and record time, I think that's huge. So, I mean, especially I would say that would be true for 70% of the students.
Would you agree that whether it was an AB schedule or some other type of schedule, we're always going to be faced with the math challenge, which is digging ourselves out of this algebra, geometry. Basically, we're going to have to come up with something creative to address the current students' math situations until we get to a point where all kids had all of algebra.
Well, which is why I said, like, that's where those conversations, where David and Jordan and I started to talk about some of those conversations, because, you know, it's, again, it goes back to the values that we have as a school district. If our values there dictate that we want to move to Algebra 1 for all, then we would look at shifts happening, you know, in order to support as those students come in, right? That's when you make the shift, because that's in the value. That's when it all aligns, right?
And this also is a good time with the fact that we just had a math curriculum review, and we are hoping to purchase these new materials and train all of our teachers and develop. I mean, spend tons of PD time next year. This would be a good time to prep that change the following year.
But did you get a sense of whether we're 2 years, 3 years, plus 5 years away from all kids being ready to take algebra in 8th grade?
That we haven't. So when I talked to him originally about it, it was about my understanding of
what's currently
happening, right?
Okay.
Because when I was asked to do this, you know, and looking at the impact, I sort of started to look at, well, what classes can kids take if you do this, and where does that lead them, and what do they do, and all of that. So that's where I sort of learned about the structures. We didn't go into depth yet, but, you know, I wanted to put that out there because we have, you know, we do have the curriculum review, we do have the space and time to do it, and I think it's, you know.
Do you have any creative solutions to get around the math debacle in this transition period? Meaning whether it was AB or whether we moved to, you know, a 6 class schedule or 5 or 7, you know, rotating. I mean, we're still going to have that math debacle no matter what. So what are the solutions, I guess?
So some school, so in Medway, they were integrated math. So that's one way. So it's basically your integrated math 1, which is part algebra 1, part geometry, integrated math 2, which is finishing up the algebra, geometry, algebra 2 in there, which then allows your 11th grader to then go straight to pre-calc.
Okay.
And then seniors to calculus, or students who are ahead. That's a huge shift. And there were, again, positives and negatives of that too. Like it's that's one option. But again, to me, it's not necessarily about like that's the challenge that we have to face, and like what do we care about, what do we want for our students is more the question, because that will then lead us to whatever answer that is. I don't have the exact answer as to how we solve that problem. Because we haven't been able to have that conversation as the middle and high school and what we want for our students, and we just don't know what it looks like. I don't know where the kids are at this moment in their math in middle school. I mean, Joni, you'd probably know better than I would.
I think ultimately, there's no quick fix for any of us. We would want to put together a strategic plan for whatever model goes into place for how we're going to backwards plan to get where we need to go. And we also have to decide which are the things that we feel the most urgent about right now, since we can't fix it all at once. Is it that we want to address some of the inequities right now? Is it that we want to spend all of next year being mindfully planning? I mean, there's just, we know that change is coming because we have recommendations. So as a community, we have to decide where we're going to start that process and what we're going to prioritize, because we can't do it all. And I know that when the Equity Steering Committee puts their recommendations, Jerry L. told us there were 50 plus recommendations. Clearly, we're not just doing all of this, so we have to decide what is manageable, what's aligned with our strategic plan and our vision for the next few years, and then decide how to plan how we get there.
And so this, in theory, could be a sort of stepping stone. So this may not be the optimal schedule that you would recommend long term.
I would not make any recommendation because I haven't had a chance to really get student I haven't had a chance.
Well, my next question is, where have you had, I know you've been meeting with the teachers and staff.
Right, so I met with teachers and staff. I sent out an email to parents, and the next is asking some of those teachers who were on the schedule committee to meet with groups of students and to create a student survey, because not all want to come and meet, and to create a survey and send that out to really understand what challenges exist for students in their schedules, sort of what they value, how they want, what they see as their experience at the high school, and that's sort of the next step in that. The schedule itself kind of makes itself based, like, I remember the first time we changed it in Medway, like it's like, by the time you asked all these questions, got all these answers, it kind of just was there. They wanted classes, they wanted some more time in their classes. We were at 53 minutes. The teachers felt like they needed some more time. But the students were like, I can't sit for much longer. And so you ended up with this balance of like 61 minutes. Like, it was like, when you have 61 minutes, where does that fit into how many periods, and looking at graduation requirements, and what do you want for students in their experience? Do we want freshmen to have the opportunities to take some of the foundations or essay writers, or like, what do you need to fit in those schedules? What do we want? I think when I think about Holliston High School, I think one of the amazing things we offer are those those one-term classes, and I know I've heard from students, from parents, from teachers, that's something they don't want lost. That it's like clearly across the board one thing that nobody wants gone from this place. And so when you're talking about those kind of things, that's a totally different type of schedule. So it's got to come out. It's got to be an organic process that has all these voices that allow us to sort of put that puzzle together. And again, nothing's perfect, but you hope to achieve the goals through the values versus like, just saying, okay, we think 68 minutes is it. Like, why? I don't know. But or we need 15 periods or 20 periods or one, who knows. And so hopefully it comes as more of an organic process through.
Yeah, so likely this is not, regardless of what happens next year, it's not a final schedule either way. If we did move that, it would address some of the inequities. So I think that's why we wanted to talk about it with you. It's something we talked about other nights. And if we do want to address some of those inequities for next year, this would be, like you said, I guess, a stepping stone there. But we would have to have a longer-term plan for where we would go after that.
Well, and we really need to, have those conversations with the teachers and all the staff and the students and get buy-in, as you referenced up there. Because if you don't have sort of stakeholder, buy-in, then you're.
And I know that the teachers would be happy to talk to member school committee about their thoughts on it. As I said, the teachers have been amazingly thoughtful in the conversations about the schedule. I mean, I will admit, when I walked in, I was, you walk into a block schedule and you're like, wow, that's like antiquated, and like that's because everybody's like making these switches from block scheduling over the past 10 to 12 years, and when talking to the teachers, you're really able to understand some of the values that they have in it and what they're able to build with that time, but they also understand the challenges that exist, and I'm sure they're and I know they're willing to engage in the conversation. They have been awesome in those conversations. Nobody's like, stopping saying, absolutely not, we can't have these conversations. They're really engaging in trying to understand how we can best support the needs of students. And, everybody knows how this impacts world language. Everybody knows how it impacts us. Like, we can keep going down the well, but as I said, I think, I really want to spend some time talking to student groups and understanding that impact, understanding how it impacts students who have IEPs, 504s, AP, not AP, whatever. It's like, and seeing what that voice is important. And I'm sure teachers would be willing to have lots of conversations with school committee members, community members across the board about the schedule.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
2 more weeks to see you again, is it?
Yes.
Sure.
Put them in your schedule, David. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Put you in there for 10:30.
I have 4 weeks. That's my kid's bar mitzvah in like 2 weeks. So
Day after?
The day after? No.
That's Sunday, no, yeah.
Yeah, it's a few days after.
Yeah, a few days.
Yeah.
Dan, should we go to flag?
Good job.
Because we have some people here for.
Yes, probably.
Well, are there going to be any central office updates given everything we've done?
Very quickly.
What was that?
I certainly can hold it.
All right, so we'll
Do you want to do quick while we're breaking? I can do
Yes,
quick.
do it
Okay.
here,
So,
yeah.
just Mr. Boudet, Mr. Alfred, and actually Ms. Borski and myself attended a select board meeting on Monday night, and they did vote to support our SOI for the accelerated repair program for the Rams roof, which Mr. Boudet submitted today.
I guess it goes my thunder, but yeah, sure. Had a whole show pretty much.
And I do have I forgot to bring it for you to sign for the
For high school.
The high school
Yeah.
SOI as well, but we have that ready to go, and I'll be working on that application as well.
Right.
We have time for that, but everything's at least ready to go. And then I did attend the elementary PTO meeting yesterday, which I haven't always been able to attend, and I was very impressed with the large number of parents that were there, and I heard that was a very high number of attendance, so I just was fortunate enough to be there, but I was pleased to see all the work that our PTO members are doing to support the elementary schools. I had roundtables at Miller, and I'm having one at Placentino tomorrow, and then I don't know if you want me to talk about we have the Holliston Coalition later, so Amanda can speak to that.
Okay, great. Mr. Boudet? Or
She took my turn. I'm done.
You're, okay. Dr.
The
Bernard?
only thing I wanted to mention, if people did not have a chance, please check out the newsletter that went out last Thursday, the Teaching and Learning newsletter. We've had 4,655 views, so thank you very much. There's tons of information in there. If you have any questions, please reach out to me.
Okay. I do. Why don't you give the update then on the coalition? Just because I want to wait till everyone gets back to move on to
Amanda, do you
March.
want to?
So we had this is the Coalition Against Hate and Bias, met Tuesday night.
No.
Or was it last night?
Last night.
It seems like so
Last year to.
It was last night. Sorry, I've been here since 5.
Yes, I was there.
As I can't believe. Sarah was there, me, and Dr. Kuska, and we are continuing to make progress as far as not only figuring out the best ways to sort of group together the different organizations that are represented in that coalition, which is the police force, Holliston Drug and Alcohol Commission,
CPAC,
CPAC, Youth and Family Services, thank you.
Diverse
Schools,
Holliston.
Diverse Holliston.
Town administrator.
Town administrators, many,
Human
many more.
resources, yeah.
Awesome, nice to share like what certain things each group go through and how we can unify those and find strategic initiatives and narrow our focus to identify what those goals are and how we can work together to meet them.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Amanda, that I missed your update.
Do we also go for the rental update?
I don't know. Is there a rental update? I put it on there. But no. Okay.
Nothing to report.
So now next, all 3 are for voting.
Minnie's running the meeting now. This is great.
Sorry.
Well, I'm waiting for Dawn to get back because I'm going to let Dawn run the flag field discussion. So.
In the meantime, Mark Frank is
In the
available
meantime,
on
we can
Zoom,
get
so
Mark
we can make
up
sure
here
that
and
we
Melissa.
can
Yeah.
hear.
Hi, guys.
Mark, can you hear us?
He told me it's very hard.
I can hear you. I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll just say I'm going to actually recuse myself and abstain from voting on this just because of the potential conflict with the library having expressed some unofficial interest in the flag field. And I'm going to let Dawn run this conversation.
Okay, so we'll have
All right. Mark, do you want to start or do you want me to?
You can, I think that we put the proposal out there before. I've spoken to most of the members here, I think, in the interim about some of the updates, just that the court plan is part of a greater plan. We have an application into CPC right now, which they seem very much interested in. I think we'd like to get someone from the school committee, if this group agrees to vote in favor of seeking funding, we'd like to get someone in front of the CPC next week with us on behalf of the application. But I think that a couple of the other things to think about are just the fact that during an engineering phase, if we want to make tweaks to the plan that we have, that would be the time to do it. This is not a final plan that we have in place right now. We're in a good place as long as we all agree that we have a good baseline and that we are in agreement that something needs to be done there. Doesn't feel like the right time to delay this any further. We want to get funding for it during this cycle, as opposed to putting it off to get funding for engineering in October. I think that would be the right thing. Otherwise, we're probably delaying the project, a year, 6 months or a year or more. So, I don't know what specific questions people have about the plan or about anything like that, but I just think the time is right for us to at least agree to move forward to try to work on it together.
I think, Mark, I'll just say, this is Susan Kuska, the students are very excited every time I meet with them, because they've discussed it with me at length last year at the middle school and at Miller when I have my roundtables. Inadvertently, at least one or more students asked me, do you have any updates? Do you have any updates? So they are very excited at this possibility, and I agree with you. I think that I'm hoping that we can move forward with this and get a plan together for the students in the community.
And Susan, is that the council group that you meet with?
The roundtable, yes.
Okay, so like 10 or 12
I meet with about 20-something at the middle school, probably about 20 or so at each group.
Okay, understood. And Melissa, did you have?
No, I think I was here just to see if people had any questions on the plan. Certainly what we had and presented before was from information from just, the landscape architect looking at the site, what can go there, input from, Chris Perry in terms of track usage there, what they need, students, what teachers, the steering group, just kind of a collective. It didn't just come out of nowhere. We did have input from the school about that, and then knowing that it can be tweaked. It most likely will have to be tweaked based on the engineering, and also we want to take into account as much input as we can. At the same time, we took down that, or the town took down that building in 2017. Yeah. So we are now 7 years later, and it's just, it's such a useful piece of land to just sit there. And it would be one thing if the town was flush with field space and we didn't, but we aren't. So I feel like, it just is a perfect, marriage of using that for the basketball court, a walking loop, some tracks, some quiet space, some outdoor teaching space. It just seems like a shame to just leave that go undeveloped. And if we can agree that we're all in favor of doing something there, if we can get the engineering from CPC, and then once we know the full plan, take it to the town as a capital request, we're still probably a year to 18 months out. But if we delay this to the next CP cycle, then we're even that much further out. Right? We've kind of kicked the can on this. And I understand there's a lot of priorities in town, but it just seems a shame to let it go any further.
And you mentioned, I'm so glad you've done this, but there was consultation with one of the track coaches.
Yeah, I know that Chris Perry had talked to Inga, what do you need? We need straightaways for hurdle, because our middle school, we can't take all of the middle school track stuff and, have it here, but, to not always have to be at the high school, because as you guys know, when the middle school track is at the high school, then it delays when lacrosse can practice and things like that. So I don't know all the stakeholders. I know Dr. Kuska was involved, but there were people consulted about what, if we did this here, what would be most beneficial to your students.
And that this space developing this space is part of a larger plan in terms of where the Parks and Recs wants to go, in terms of goodwill with tennis courts that we absolutely as a district would benefit from, because we've never been able to host because we don't have enough tennis courts.
Yeah, so needing those 5 courts to have a true varsity match take place. We have the 4 there. We have the basketball court. If we were moving a basketball court to this space, which actually too, and Mark can speak more to this about basketball, but this allows us 1 full court, 2 half courts, which we can't fit in at Goodwill because the space isn't there, but then we could have the extra tennis court there. And there is nowhere else right now at Goodwill to put a 5th tennis court. We've done work over there because of the groundwater. you can't fit a fifth tennis court there.
Seems like the reason you've been kicking the can is because you've been doing all of the research that's possible to do, consulting with everyone you need to, and making the best plan possible without asking for anything from us. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I will say from a CPC perspective, like, because I've been on community preservation as long as I've been on parks, and I'm not going to give that amount of years, but it always helps when we're going asking for CPC money, because it is taxpayer dollars, and we're very concerned about where that money goes if it's a joint effort. So having support saying, school committee's on board, they want to see this developed too, to take that step to do engineering, it is very helpful. Because then for CPC, after the commission votes on it, that goes before the town. So then at town, we can say both schools and parks are presenting this proposal, and that just holds more weight. And it is your property. So there's that aspect too.
So the original drawing that we saw when the presentation came in initially, it's not complete. There can be more things added, and that was really important. I know I was able to speak with Mark Frank and get some of my questions answered, but I just think it's important. We have a track program that usually services like 100 kids, and even kids on the wait list each year, boys and girls, and we have a track program without really a track. They get use of the track once a week or once every other week. And to do that, you're putting 100 middle school kids up here, and that kind of displaces, other sports and activities that are going on. So I'm strongly in favor of us looking at, even if it's like a strip of track, a way to do high jump, long jump, a way for kids to safely hurdle on that strip. I was able to talk to Mark a little bit about, it sounds like we could have lighting and power outside. Is that, would you agree to that?
So the only thing I will say is, I don't know the angles of the lights, but I will say we had some neighborhood complaints about just some of the existing lights in the building. We've had to shut them off. So I mean, just be aware of that.
Understood. I thought
Residential
the
area.
power part was interesting, and here's why, is that we have a robust drama program, both at the middle school and the high school, and one of the things that came out of COVID, if people remember, I think it was spring of 21, we had like chorus concerts outside while lacrosse games were going on. I would love to be able to see the middle schoolers have that kind of experience, especially I think we've seen them run, end of year celebrations where they've done it outside because it was still sort of the end of COVID, and we, put essentially a dance and a celebration outside. So the idea to have that kind of, you could put a mic out, or maybe have the band, or consider putting a play on out there. I think those are all really interesting things that we should be looking at with this design, especially if we're going to have some level of seating around that basketball area. So, and outdoor
I think the outdoor classroom area, would probably be a better spot
more the
for it.
outdoor classroom area. The other thing that was brought up, the downtown septic sewer project. We've heard from James Keys, talked to Paul Songier. It seems like this would be part of an phase 2 or overflow. Keith, you may know more, but it's not. In talking to Paul last night at CPC, even with the current design, there would be enough impervious soil. I think, that you can have this area, but there would still be the ability, if that ended up happening in the same space, you should be able to marry the two projects. And they are doing some more engineering over there, is my understanding.
And I would just add that all of this stuff is going to be best determined by putting an engineering plan in place.
Right.
Any of the stuff that we're talking about here is, we can all speculate about what it is, but it's really going to be a cost-benefit analysis that an engineer needs to take on in terms of, here's all the elements we want, here's what they would cost us to do. Is the town willing to make that investment? I mean, if it's a good plan, we can pair it or scale it to whatever, makes sense at the time that we actually want to go out to build it. So, I just think this is the logical next step to kind of make progress on this, sort of. And obviously our engineers would have to work with the engineers who are working on the septic plan as well, which I think Paul confirmed that last time was, if I'm not mistaken, that's a reasonable thing that they would be able to do.
Do we have any additional questions for Melissa or for Mark Frank? Is anybody ready to make a vote on this?
I am.
Okay.
Is there particular wording that we need to put in place?
Yeah, is there any?
I think, and Mark, you can weigh on this too, I think at this point, what we need is, I don't want to say the word blessing, but the school committees go ahead to do the engineering on this, because it is school site. So, if we're kind of taking charge of this project, so I think it would be, moving forward with engineering designs to look into developing this site.
You could either
Mark, is there
Request for
something you
CPC
think?
funds.
I was going to say, could either go.
Yeah, I guess we're just support of the application. I mean, I don't really know. That's kind of up to you guys how you want to support it. But we have an application in on behalf of Parks and Rec. Do you want it to be a application? I do have some questions about how you want the process to go forward from here.
I'm wondering, Mark, I mean, I've been working with CPC, but would it be stronger if you voted to partner with Parks and Rec to move forward with the plan to?
Yeah, I think that
Mr.
would
Boudet,
be.
do you have a comment?
Yeah.
Being here
As the operational.
being here for a few years, I don't know the current tone of CPC. You would know that better, Melissa, with regards to doing projects that involve the schools, as I'm sure before as you know, it was verboten.
Yes.
And that's the best way I can describe it.
And that was before, going back, when we did Goodwill Park, we could not go to CPC because there was a lot of restrictions around using community preservation funds to create new park spaces. But then when we did the Miller Playground, right, Miller?
Yeah.
Well, but the Miller Playground was by a parent group, not by the schools, not by the school department.
Schools, yeah, but I don't think, no, I understand what you're saying, yeah, but we could use funds towards it, but I don't feel like that is so much.
Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah. No, I don't think.
A lot of birds in my saddle.
Given that, does it make more sense for us to vote to authorize Parks and Rec to move forward?
Application to CPC for
I
engineering design.
don't feel like there's a big tone saying like, oh, if it's a school thing.
It's up to you. I mean, they can probably do support or partner.
To me, I mean, that's just my take on it. But to me, it seemed they seem comfortable with that. Or however you guys want to. I think we're in good shape for it as long as we just have your support.
Yeah, they've already done the application. Let's just vote to support the application.
Okay.
I'm moving to support the application.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
I'm going to abstain as a conflict of interest, although I fully support it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
And, if anybody will talk, if anybody wants to come to the next CPC meeting, it is next Wednesday today's Thursday, right? It's next Wednesday at 7:30 at Town Hall. So, and we can send that information out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing I'll say is those seats are much more comfortable.
They are.
I have to go over there.
Sorry.
Reports from subcommittee, communications.
We have not met.
Okay. Policy,
We meet this month. We're going to have to meet next month.
budget. How many times have we met?
We met on February 28th, and we met before that on.
We just voted on capital. Can we move on?
Yes, we just voted on
Let's go.
capital. We really have
We're
covered.
done.
Other than the update on the high school auditorium wall, bids are in for the next part of it, and I think when Keith updates us later, we'll go over that. So yeah, move on.
Okay. Can you, I guess we'll go to the school calendar.
Oh, the calendar.
Can you bring up the
the graphs? Is that what you were?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
my little presentation
The
thing.
graphs that say nothing.
Did you
Wah,
make a
wah.
presentation, Dan? Or you talking about-
Yeah, there's a little
Oh,
presentation.
it's in the agenda?
In the.
I did notice
I don't
that
think-
my sample pilot schedule was still not included in the agenda that I just want people to look at, that's all.
No, because we're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna. it's a potential
Obviously, it
opening.
doesn't matter anymore because nobody wants to do anything different. Wah, wah.
Yeah, I didn't think that I thought it was quite informative.
Well,
I thought it was gonna
it's
be a little-
informative that, it's like we're just staying the course, I guess. That's,
Where am I?
that's informative too, but
Oh, there it is.
when it's January 18th, I'm sorry, June and 18th, and everybody's sweating bullets, don't want to hear it.
No,
I'll give you a fan
Yeah, I told you so.
and some ice and some popsicles.
So,
Exactly.
as
Moving
everyone,
on.
as most people probably are aware, we did survey the community about potentially shortening February break in order to ensure that we were able to get out a little earlier in June. We looked at this as between staff and parents and its totality. So,
I just put up the screen.
so we got 1,219 responses, which is, that's a pretty good response rate. Apparently people are interested in this. 258 from staff, which, is about 50% of staff. 953 from parents and guardians, and then other, I'm not sure who those were, but, and so looking at the staff first, they were the most, 64% of staff wanted to sort of keep the sort of status quo, if you will. I know there are comments about some other options, but based on what we were asking for, and so I think even once you get to that, you kind of stop before you even go forward. But the parent guardian group, a little less sort of, or more sort of split, but still 52 keep the same and 42 reduce February break, and then 6% with no preference. So you put it all together, 55% wanted to keep it the same. So I think that
Nobody wanted to look at my pilot schedule. Oh well.
I view this as a strong anti-Cynthia vote, and
Yeah, I am too. I'm out. Bye.
Cynthia, it was an awesome idea.
See ya.
We really have to go, I think we have to weigh the staff vote heavier too.
Yep.
Because if I'm a parent, I can just be like, it's fine, I have plans for the Bahamas, but I'll just take my kids out of school for those days. Staff don't have the option to do that.
And I think it was also, if none of the surrounding, that was a lot of the comments, if none of the surrounding towns are doing the same thing.
Right.
I need daycare.
Yeah.
There's people that send their kids to private schools that have a March break. I'm just saying, they're still there.
So anyway, I think that we still need to have conversations.
DOA.
We still need to have conversations about the calendar, but I think that this is not going to be part of
Fine. Whatever. Moving on.
Okay.
I've moved on mentally
Planning
and
on- Are
physically.
we trying to vote on the calendar in March? March 14th meeting?
We need to.
We can't vote on the
Or
calendar
should we
yet.
vote on the first and last day of school?
No, we've done
did
that.
that
We did it already.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I really, that's really all you need to vote on. What I would do, though, is that when we have finalized, we will come back and present that.
Okay.
Because what I want to do is get it done so that we can share it out to the community.
Right.
Well,
But we
yeah.
don't technically need you to vote on anything. We'll reach informative.
Okay. Okay.
No, but people do usually by March, people know
Oh,
what the calendar is
definitely.
for
I
the
mean,
next
yes.
year.
Yeah,
Because they're
I like to Google
planning.
it.
And I'm hoping we'll be able to get that in
Yeah.
one of the March meetings.
Okay, that would be the hope.
So there are 7 of us here. I did put on here a potential revote of the Holliston High School SOI. We would have to, I guess, reread the whole thing.
Oh,
Do we need to revote the whole thing?
It's 5. It was
Is it
only,
because the select board voted
No.
unanimously?
This was
Thank
only.
you, by the
This
way.
was great that we got unanimous support from the select board, and we really do appreciate that. No, this was only because we had 2 absent
Oh,
last
right.
time. So do we
So
want
do you
it?
mean for both of them?
No, because Keith already had to submit the roof repair. The accelerated
Oh,
roof
so
repair.
it's just for the.
So we could do the high school. Does it change? Do you think it strengthens the application to have it 7-0? Is it worth it?
I don't know that it would matter. Unless,
is
if
rolling
you
his
had
eyes.
some no votes, I think that
Yeah,
could go
I-
on. But because it was people.
Okay.
We were 100%, it's just that we weren't all here,
I don't
because
think
it
that would
couldn't be,
change it.
wasn't it?
Who was that?
You
Was
were
it
ill,
Amanda
or-
and
Yeah,
me?
you
Would you
were-
guys just like to go on
well,
record
yeah.
as being?
No, I was there.
Me and Lisa.
Lisa.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, Lisa, I wasn't
So,
here, yeah.
so
I would abstain anyway if it had the thing about the 8th graders at the high school, so it's better that I wasn't here.
okay. Okay, then we're definitely not revoting it. Okay. So, Am I missing any?
We have no newsletter, but we have to go back to our
that's right.
statement.
That's right, because Cynthia made us skip it.
Yes, I did, because I wanted to be cognizant of those who are in the room.
Statement, maybe we do convert it to newsletter and put our March open, our office hours.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
But we haven't set those hours
I
yet.
think it is important to put it out tomorrow.
I think so.
I want to do it like now.
I personally,
Like when
and
we're
plus it's a
done.
joint from myself and you versus your newsletter, I think it would be a standalone, and then
Yeah.
I think it would
Okay.
make sense. And then
Lisa, do we need to add anything more?
So are we going to send an update
Re-engage, please.
just with hours?
Thank you.
I mean, my thought is we need to get those hours out.
We do, but like,
So
let's
are we
just get the
waiting till
statement
March
out like
14th?
tonight. I mean, I would like it out like now. Like I want to email it to Dan McLeod and say if you could send it out for tomorrow morning, that'd be awesome.
I think we
I'll
should
take care
approve
of it.
this statement and send it out tomorrow, but I think Dawn's question is.
You're right,
should we
though. We
also,
should do that. Do we want to talk about that right
decide
now?
some dates for budget office hours so that the three of us can have a communications meeting in which we do a newsletter containing those dates?
Right, but then that won't go out until March 14th, and those are all March dates.
Yeah, we could just decide office hours now and send out a separate email.
Yeah,
Okay.
with just office hours.
I would like to find a way to put paraprofessionals earlier in
Well, so
in the
it was in the very first line, but then that was removed.
right.
So,
No, I understood, but
okay, I just want you to be clear
No,
that it was there.
Make it the title?
Yeah, we can make
and
it
this
the
is going to
title.
be put on letterhead, right? Or
Well, I usually do it through Bright Arrow, in the Holliston Public Schools template that I have, not on letterhead. 'Cause we
okay,
go in through.
and it's going to come from.
So should we just say the
Dear
successfully
parents,
negotiated three-year collective bargaining agreement between the paraprofessionals unit, the
Are you looking at the one that Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one with all the markups. A 3-year with the paraprofessional unit.
Beginning, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You should put the full name, though.
Yeah.
With the
The Holliston Federation of Teachers Paraprofessional Unit, that's what.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Sarah, can you not see it? Because I'm.
Are we all going to write in it, or is Lisa going to write it?
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Thank you.
And then I would like to reorder the bullets.
Oh, Jesus, really?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
I did it in order at the end.
Yeah, we
Right,
just, yeah, we just
But
put it.
I don't know, and it's fine, but I
You
think
can
there's.
highlight whatever top first, I
Yeah.
don't care.
I think putting the steps, the COLA,
Sure.
some of the other stuff up front.
Yep,
Are you in here now, Lisa?
Yeah, hold on.
yeah, she's in it, but she was, I don't, if all of us are writing.
No,
it's
I
gonna
just
be
didn't see
messy.
her in there. She was typing in. I didn't see
Yeah.
anything moving.
Okay, so Lisa, we just wanted to add it in the very first paragraph that it has to say the 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the Holliston Federation of Teachers Paraprofessionals Unit beginning September, yeah. it
Can we
has to
just
say
put,
that.
let's have that in the title.
No.
No,
Let's just have that,
Do you want me to do it?
yes, yeah, just so you do it.
Bargaining agreement. I don't know how to type. That's weird.
no, it
with-
already has a Holliston.
Yep. With the.
Oh, you're killing me. Stop,
We've met
stop.
this-
Just,
this-
I'll
I
do
told
it.
you,
I'll do it. I'll do
Lisa.
it. Stop.
No, there's got to be the dash is
She's
important.
dying. I told her. Like,
Really?
why do you do this?
He's the best.
I know, that's why I asked, please.
She's not going back to taking messages.
Fine. We're not putting that in the same sentence.
That's fine.
I don't think you need to cover all paraprofessionals.
No.
yet.
No, we're
taking
taking it
that
out. It's after 10.
Y'all get grouchy Lisa after 10.
It's okay.
All right, next paragraph.
You got your sugar fix, you're good.
All right.
Somebody give her
Can I
some
just
chocolate
start? Can I
stack.
start moving things around?
No, I
No,
swear to God.
No.
don't touch it.
No, wait, just, can we talk about it first?
Parachute service.
I want
We're doing the second paragraph.
Yes,
Does anybody have an issue?
I moved on.
It sounds good.
yes, thank you. We can
Okay,
accept the
third
change, whatever.
paragraph. Does anyone have any issues with the third paragraph?
Oh, do I need to accept the changes?
I can do it when I'm going to clean it up tomorrow, formatting wise.
Okay,
Either one of it,
I
because I'm
can-
on it as an editor, either one. So you
okay.
can.
Yeah, let's clean it up now.
Yeah.
Let's clean it
Let's
up.
just
as
do
we
it, let's
go.
just accept it as we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is going to come out from the Holliston School Committee?
Yes, and the superintendent document.
superintendent. Yeah.
Oh, you can put the,
I can put it in the header, yeah. Yeah.
I don't
I'm gonna
have
start,
editing
I know, I'm
privileges.
sorry, I'm gonna start, can I just give you editing privileges with
No,
that?
just start accepting
Okay,
changes.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Third paragraph, going once, going twice. Sold. Okay, the fourth one is deleted because we moved it. Okay, now we can do the bullets.
okay. So I would like the steps to go first.
Okay, where is that?
Do you want Dan to cut and paste the bullets?
No,
Nope.
It's right in the middle.
They don't want me touching it.
You've been from touching it like I am.
Yeah, that's a good edit.
Then I'd like the COLA.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Longevity bonus, right?
Let me see what happened. But I think that's what it was. Then the RBT.
Yeah. I hate to admit that I agree with you.
It's okay.
me too.
When you're right so often, most people agree with me.
It's just dead silent.
Then I've got the increase in sub rates.
That's not quite right, though. We have to fix that, the sub rate. So the sub rate is currently $32.50. I was trying not to be too wordy. It should go to 35, then
Yep, and then it goes to
$37.50.
$37.50,
That's
then
why
40.
it's currently $32.50 and it will go up.
But it says by year 3 of the contract.
But it's not $32.50 next school year. Next school year, it's 35. It's currently $32.50.
Oh.
and
Okay,
by
so
the
let's
end,
do
it'll go.
35 next year. From $35 next school year to $40 per day.
Why not from $32.50 this school year
That's what
to $40 by the end of the contract?
How about $35?
No, $32.50.
No, $35 next school year to $40 per day above the regular compensation by year 3 of the contract, comma, which is an increase from the current rate of $32.50.
It's a lot more words than necessary, but
It's wordy.
It works.
all right. So that
Wait,
How's my
yeah.
posture?
that should be 4. Then longevity.
Hold on, which is an increase from the current
Rate
rate.
of $32.50.
Hold on, let me move that one before you say the next one.
Oh my God, I just need to give her editing privileges.
Okay, where are we now? So we've done RBT. You want
Under
this one
RBT,
under
yeah.
RBT?
Mhm.
Substitute? Okay. Okay.
I am,
Well,
I'm
Then
doing.
longevity. And the referral bonus, building liaisons, increased tuition, and increased flexibility. Which is how it is.
Okay.
So we have successful 3-year collective bargaining.
Okay, and then I added the contract allows us to remain competitive with surrounding communities, all of which have, like Holliston, struggled to fill vacant paraprofessional positions in recent years.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yes.
So how is this gonna go? Do we need a title
We need,
or a?
we need to be dear parents, guardians, and whatever the sort of.
We can, I mean, I was going to put it like joint statement from the,
Yeah, I was just gonna say joint
want it as a
statement.
letter or as a joint statement?
Joint statement. Because then we don't need to put a lot of fluff like, thank you so much for everyone that's, I don't know.
Increased.
This is a piece of information.
Joint statement to the community.
Yeah.
Compensation.
I'm the superintendent.
I don't like that. I don't know whether it's at years. A year 20. I don't like how 20 is just sitting like that.
Yeah, 20 should be 20, not spelled mailed out 20.
No, I know, it's just, I don't like it how it's just like stuck in the end.
20th year? I want to say 20th.
So should the contract say 3-year with a 3? Or is it written 3, okay?
It's usually written.
Okay, it is, that's fine, I just wanted to make sure.
THRE.
Yeah, it is. Let me get all this stuff out. I gave you editing, but it's still doing the suggesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't accept.
Yeah.
It's done, I actually shared,
Wait, you
shared
can
it with
edit,
you.
but you can't accept changes?
You're right.
No, I can, I have to do it.
It's weird.
Over 10, you start writing.
Okay, so we need to delete all this stuff here. Hold on.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yikes.
Down at the bottom, we recognize needs of space.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, the third bullet has something funky in it. It's just, I think it's just an edit that didn't get accepted
What is it, removal? Okay, sorry.
yet. I might have just done that one.
I'm trying to catch them all as they go. Hold on.
Yeah, it was just a dash.
But we recognize needs of space.
Yeah, Don had that one 5 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there you go.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to accept as amended joint, this is the joint statement to the community from the Holliston School
Moved by
Committee.
Lisa.
Second by Amanda.
We're all clambering.
All in favor? Thank you very much. With that, I believe, because we don't have a newsletter, wait, do we want to set dates? Do we want to talk dates now for?
Yes,
Okay.
we have to set dates.
We should.
So let's do one Zoom,
One Coffee Haven.
one Coffee Haven,
Let me do 2 Zoom.
2 Zoom, 1
Two
Coffee
Zoom.
Haven.
Yeah.
Let's not do Casey's. As
I've
much as
never
I would
done a
actually
Casey's.
like to do. I would prefer to do a Casey's, honestly.
I've
but
never done one. Are they usually
No
well
one come.
attended?
No one's gonna come.
No, hopefully the Zoom one will.
The Zoom is gonna capture people who would have done that because that's the evening.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 Zoom. So what are?
Okay, so the 19th is February vacation.
I mean, this.
We're out of February vacation, honey. We already did that.
So I want to be clear. This can be done.
Wow.
This can be done via email. We could. You could send out basically a list of dates, and everyone could respond to you with their availability
Yeah, we could
on
do
those
like a little
dates.
doodle poll or
Just to be
something.
clear, this is one of the exceptions to the OML
Yeah.
scheduling is
Do you want
allowed.
me to just do that tomorrow
and then
morning?
you
Yeah.
send it to Susan or
Because it's
Dan
just
or whoever
scheduling, it's
will
not
send it out.
voting
Send
on
it out.
something, we're just
Right arrow.
scheduling.
No, but scheduling specifically.
That's what I'm saying, like,
specifically
we're
carved
allowed
out
to
of it,
schedule
Set
by
a
email
reminder for 8 a.m.
and then send something
tomorrow
out.
to choose.
It's like
office
setting up a
hours.
meeting, like, we can do that via email or text.
Correct.
It's fine.
Okay, so with that,
Let's go.
we come to the end of our agenda. I got to say,
Oh, I would've been less
Lisa,
grouchy,
Lisa
but-
DeLuzio, you are like, I mean, you know, 10:15.
Would you, though?
Is the, what? She's got the timing down. I mean, we're 9 minutes late, but I gotta say, with everything, that's pretty good. So our next meeting will be March 14th, 2024. We do have reason to re-enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and this is related to strategy related to collective bargaining with the HFT, specifically the teachers. So with that, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn into executive session,
Moved by Cynthia.
from which we will not
Second by
return.
Dawn.
Okay?
Roll
Minnie?
call.
Roll call. Minnie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. With that, we are adjourned for the night. Thank you and good night.